This story begins with a call that could change Soho's life forever. He asks what happened and is told he must take the position of head of the trade guild, leaving Soho puzzled. Why him? The guy believes it's the rightful position of the eldest son, and explains that, as the youngest in the family, it doesn't make sense for him to take on such a role. The man sitting at the table objects, saying he's much more talented than him in this field. This was the main reason they rose from a small trading guild to become one of the 3 greatest. The guy struggles to find the right words to explain why he doesn't want to take such a high position. He wants to shout out loud without holding back that he loves having no responsibilities and just doing nothing. Instead, Soho says that if he becomes head of the trade guild, he'll have to attend dinners with business partners and play along with their small talk. And he'll be the one to blame if the guild's reputation suffers. He doesn't want any of that. The person, whose face is barely visible in the dimly lit room, watches him silently. Soho looks back at him with eyes full of stubbornness and a refusal to take responsibility for the trade guild. For a moment, the room falls silent as the man sits at a small table, clutching a cup of tea, while Soho, suddenly rising from his chair in an emotional burst, freezes in place, staring into his eyes. The silence hanging in the room is broken by a man's laughter. He says, "All right then, they'll do it just the way he wants." In the blaze of the fire, the head of a man is seen mounted on a club. Everything Soho and his family worked so hard to build is being wiped away. Their mansion is engulfed in flames, and all around are stakes with human bodies impaled on them. The man who had guarded him since childhood, his second brother, Mr. Chan from the Money Pavilion, Mr. Lim from the Sea Breeze Pavilion, the generals, the Silver Wind Squad commander, and even the head of the Sunset Pavilion, everyone Soho knew, were now dead and lying before him. The youngest son of the Silver Sea Trading Guild, and Soho, sits slumped against the wall, his lips split and clothes stained with blood. He looks utterly exhausted, sweat dripping down his face, holding a blade tightly. White Sky Namgun Kang, the head of the trade guild, approaches him, his figure clear against the burning mansion. Soho glares at the man with hatred, thinking, it's all his fault. Meanwhile, he approached Soho, pressing the blade to his throat, saying he was sorry it had to end with the boy's death. Soho asked if the White Sky Trading Guild wasn't part of the Murim Alliance, and if it was right to do such things while representing the righteous Murim. Namgun Kang says that top management knows they are throwing obstacles in their way. A man asks, shouldn't he have toned down his enthusiasm, especially with that kind of money? Soho exclaims, money? They just couldn't compete because of their incompetence. And after all that, that's all Namgun has to say? Ridiculous. The head of the White Sky Trading Guild narrows his eyes and asks, what? Focusing his inner energy in his hand and trying to strike his opponent, Soho shouts, has he gone deaf? Namgun kicks the guy in the chest, sending him flying backward. Falling to his knees, he coughs while clutching his bruised chest, and it's clear you can't let your guard down around him. He raises the blade above his head and says, it's precisely because they're so dangerous that they eliminate the Silver Sea Trading Guild. Then, saying goodbye, Namgun beheads Soho. The young man's final thought was the bitter realization that it was all in vain. Could the life of a simple merchant truly hold no value in the world of Murim martial arts? Only now does regret come to him. If only he had trained to fight since childhood. If their trade guild had spread its influence more, maybe they all would have survived. But this thought fades in Soho's severed head. A voice calls out to the young craftsman, and he opens his eyes. A very young guy sits at the table, papers spread out before him, and, looking confused, he lets the pen slip from his fingers. The man standing by the table says he knows his health isn't great, but there's no way he's sleeping on his first day at work. Soho rubbed his eye with his fist, confused. What's going on? Is he still alive? Meanwhile, the man keeps talking. He asked him to review last year's harvest stocks and analyze the results. The guy realizes his vision is blurry. He can barely see and can hardly hear anything. Meanwhile, a blurry figure of a man approaches him, saying the head of the trade guild is genuinely worried about his health and asks if he wants him to send him to bed. In Soho's mind, a thought flashes. If he's still alive, Namgun must be right in front of him, and with fists raised, he lunges at the man. He steps back in surprise, watching as the boy, missing his mark, clumsily falls onto the table. A man hits him on the head with a stick, asking if he's still not awake. The calm young man reflects on his feelings, sensing that this emotion is familiar to him. Looking at the man's face blurring in his eyes, he realizes this is not Namgun. It suddenly hits him. It's the chief inspector of the Silver Sea Trade Guild, Yuso Ak. Holding his head with both hands, he thinks, but the inspector has been dead for a long time. How can he still be alive? Sitting on the floor where he fell after being hit with a baton, the guy asks, am I in hell? The chief inspector laughs. He still hasn't come to. Leaning toward the young man and looking him in the eyes, he says that in all his years of training 3 young masters, no one has ever tried to hit him before. The guy is very special, and the young man tries to explain that he's still not fully himself, and that it was just a misunderstanding. The loud voice of Yuso Aka can be heard even outside the house as he orders the guy to go to his room and stare at the wall, and the guy doesn't dare argue with the inspector. A guy sits on a chair labeled thinking chair, reflecting on how he still remembers dying, puzzled why. Instead of that, he's being scolded by Chief Inspector Yuso Aka. He recalls that analyzing last year's harvest was the first task he got when he started learning their business, and after that lecture, he felt completely crushed, remembering the inspector scolding him. "Is this what you call an analysis? A wild cow could do better." And Yuso Aka thought the guy deserved thanks for the trash the inspector could at least use as fertilizer in his garden. Soho wonders if his guess might be right. He calls out "Yinam" and waits silently. He doesn't have to wait long. Suddenly a girl's head appears from above, and his bodyguard, Ye Yun-am, immediately responds to the call, and Soho asks, "How old am I now?" A girl jumps to the floor and asks if he was hit that hard, while the guy just wants a straight answer. The bodyguard says that yesterday was his 15th birthday, and Soho looks at her with disbelief. 15th? But he's 39. The bodyguard says that at first he wanted to hit the chief inspector, and now he's asking about his age. She wonders if the guy is sure they don't need to call a doctor to take care of him, mentioning she knows a great specialist when it comes to mental health. A young man looks at his hands in disbelief. Smooth, unblemished skin. Could he really be young again? He slaps his cheeks loudly while his bodyguard watches him in surprise. Then she jumps up to the guy and asks, "What's the young master doing?" Clearly worried about Insoho's behavior. He replies, "It hurts." And Iyunam agrees. "Of course it hurts." The guy says confusedly, "But he's dead!" Memories of death are so vivid. His family lay dead before him, and in that moment, the sword of the guild leader, White Sky, pierced his neck. He suddenly feels the cold metal again and grabs his throat. Everything was real. The bodyguard looks at him in confusion, while Insoho thinks to himself, he's gone back to the past. But he's sure the massacre did happen, his face twisted with anger. The guy thinks he won't let this happen again, and Iyenam asks, what's wrong with his face? Does he need to use the bathroom? And Soho still remembers what happened in his past life, and knows how to act in these circumstances. So he decides to use this knowledge to become stronger and stand against the Muram alliance. A thought crosses his mind, and he stops himself, now that he's thought about it. He turns to his bodyguard and asks if she said he turned 15 yesterday. She confirms it and then asks what's going on with him today. Soho asks, "Then what year is it now?" as he tries to count on his fingers. Then he sighs. That's bad. The guy thinks there's only a week left until that event. He turns to the bodyguard once again. The guy says they need to do something, but it has to be done without anyone finding out. Yunam asks, what exactly? The girl thinks the young apprentice has hit puberty, but Soho protests so loudly that you'd think he could be heard outside the house, which isn't true. Inside an open two-part case, a smoldering fuse can be seen. They're shutting him down. A voice sounds. Is he sure? A person, their face and figure hidden beneath a hooded cloak, examines a small case and asks, "Why shouldn't I do this?" He says the youngest Soho has started learning the trade, and his bodyguard is said to be a skilled martial artist. The speaker reminds the other person of their question, asking if they can really do it discreetly. The man replies, "What does he have to fear from a child dying of illness? He can't fight, he can't even walk without a cane." Hiding the case in his pocket, he says he has a plan for the bodyguard, so there's no need to worry. He says that if anything goes wrong, he'll just kill all the witnesses. The interlocutor, chuckling, says that the man once served him like a master. A person with a hidden face thoughtfully repeats, "To the master." Then he declares firmly that the youngest member of the Silver Sea Trading Guild is destined to die young. Moonlight falls on his face, more like a devil's mask, as the man says. If he can end the boy's suffering, shouldn't the boy actually be grateful? He's sure the guy is waiting to die right now, even as they talk. Snow is falling as Soho, perched on the back of a strong, tall young man, peers through a spyglass, while the bodyguard walking beside them asks where they're headed. The guy replies that, as she knows, he's quite sensitive and needs to do physical exercises. The woman points out that they're actually doing exercises right now, and Soho says they might come across something interesting if they explore different places, to which Yun-am asks, "Interesting? Like what?" Through the telescope, the boy sees fruits hanging from the tree. A smile spreads across Soho's lips. "The best magical cure you'll find anywhere in Zhongyuan." Drops of blood fall to the floor, forming a small puddle. In a wrecked room lit by firelight, a woman with 2 arrows sticking out of her back leans on a young man, urging him to leave. While nearby, a sword juts from the floor, and with pain in his eyes, the adult Soho asks how he can possibly walk away. The woman says it's her duty, something she's lived for. She's fine and wants him to leave quickly, adding that even if she dies, she's not afraid, as long as it's not in vain, and that would be enough for her. He tries to object, but she cuts him off, saying he's never listened to her. not even when he was young. Then lifting her blood-stained face to him, she asks if he would really let her death be for nothing. Armed men burst into the room. A shout rings out. "Over here, grab them!" A woman grabs her sword, ready to fight off the attacking warriors, and tells a young man to make sure he survives, knowing he's capable of rising much higher. She turns her head slightly toward him and asks if he understands. The guy thinks that if he had to name two people he trusts most from all his lives, one would be his bodyguard, Yeon-am, who at that moment turns her head toward him just like before and asks what he's staring at. Another person in the same situation would be his servant Palgak, who is now suffering greatly from the cold. Peeking out from behind the huge snowdrift they hid behind, Soho thinks the thing he's searching for is a miracle cure that will soon spark a bloody battle, and these two are the only ones he can trust with it. The bodyguard is angry as the cold keeps getting worse. She asks what exactly they're looking for, and Soho replies, "Over there." Doesn't she see it? He points with his finger at a tree ahead, where fruits hang from one of the branches. This miraculous remedy, infused with yin energy and as rare as a 10,000-year-old snow ginseng, is the pure and pristine snow plum. Yeon-am asks, "What is this?" The guy explains that it's an incredible medicine that will cure his illness. The girl wonders if he's sure it's safe to use a medicine they know so little about, especially since they already have plenty of unusual remedies at home. Soho objects. No, they won't work. He believes his illness is more than just damaged meridians. The spiritual harmony of the star dragon is a unique physical state where a person is born with an exceptionally strong yin energy. Women naturally have the ability to harmoniously control strong yin energy, enabling them to become masters of martial arts, while in men, yin energy conflicts with yang energy, gradually leading to decline. The only way to overcome this is to use a miraculous remedy with yin energy during adolescence to transform yin into yang. He feels that in his past life, he learned about this too late, and getting a perfectly clear snowy plum was impossible. Yeon-am asks if he won't explain what's going on. The guy just asks for forgiveness and wants him to accept the situation this time. He's begging her for this, but she replies that she doesn't know who he thinks he is, since he clearly refuses to listen to his mentors. Looking ahead, she says she'll be back soon. Watching her walk away, Soho thinks he can't say he'll be stronger than her, but he'll grow as strong as he can, silently asking her not to die for him in this life. At this moment, Yeon-am stands under the tree, looking up at the plums, sighing at how high they are, then adds how tired she is of it all. A couple of days later, Soho walks through the courtyard, greeted by people bowing respectfully. The young master has already awakened. He wishes them a good morning. The guy waves to Yeon-am and Palgaku, wishing them both a good morning, and the girl replies, "Same to you," thinking to herself that they've both been sick for days because of him. Two men approach her and call out, addressing her as the bodyguard. Watching the young man walk away, leaning on his cane. They say he's changed recently, seeming to move with more energy and ease. The men keep talking about Soho, and one asks, "Hasn't he grown taller? I remember he used to be shorter than me." The other agrees. "Exactly! I'm not the only one who noticed that, right?" A young maid interrupts the conversation, saying that the boy's face has changed too. Blushing, she says he's always been handsome, but now he's the sweetest person she knows here. Though she feels he talks like an old man, and when she heard his good morning, she thought he was the chief inspector. But honestly, that just makes him even more endearing. Yeon-am listens to their conversation with a sour expression. Then, unable to hold back, she pats the girl on the back, upset that they're talking about the young master like that when he's not even 20, and tells them to get to work. One of the men disagrees, saying the boy is practically an adult. Yeon-am thinks about how Soho recently took a miraculous medicine found in the mountains, which triggered a physical transformation, preparing his body for martial arts training. But he told them to keep their transformation a secret, Yeon-am says to Palgak, walking behind her. Of course he's changed, but how much longer does he plan to keep hiding it? It's unbearable. Her companion says, "Well, at least he's healthy for now," and the girl replies, "If he gets sick again, I'll kill him." A sign reading Money Pavilion hangs on the building. The man in glasses is so surprised he can't say a word. Looking at the towering piles of papers on the desk, he stammers, surprised. Did the guy really finish all this in just 2 hours? 7th rank Money Pavilion officer Yi Chang-yi looks skeptically at one of the sheets and says, confused, "This would take at least 2 days. Then asks, "Is Soho sure he did everything right?" The guy replies that he didn't write all the documents from scratch, just made a brief summary, and says it wasn't that hard. Soho realizes he acted not just as the youngest son of the head of the Silver Sea Trade Guild, but as an experienced employee of the Money Pavilion. The guy mentally curses himself. He should have pretended to be a newbie more convincingly, since he spent so long doing this in his past life, and his enhanced state only sped him up even more. Yi Chang-yi, staring sternly at the guy through his glasses, says he doesn't want to sound harsh, but even the smallest task in the money pavilion must be done with utmost care. Financial flows in the trading group are like blood flowing through a person's veins. So what does the guy think will happen if information leaks? Soho sighs, scolding himself for being forgetful. He's asking if Yi Chan-yi means that he did everything quickly because he was rushing. The man replies that he really finished everything way too fast, recalling how just a few days ago the guy fell asleep at work and even tried to hit the chief inspector. There's no way anyone would believe he did the job that well. Soho sighs again. He already knows exactly what the other person is thinking. The guy asks if Yi Chan-yi wants to make a bet, and he replies, "On what?" Soho suggests handing everything over to Chief Inspector Yuso Aku right away and betting on whether he'll approve the work or not. The man is known for valuing his job far above family happiness, which is why he remains unmarried at such a respected age. Yi Chang-yi replies that he will make a fuss and asks if the guy is sure about his decision. Soho answers that it's uncertain whether it will happen or not. A man, thinking the guy deserves a lesson for his arrogance, agrees. All right then, and asks, "What are you two arguing about?" Soho replies that the loser will take care of all the remaining paperwork today, and the man agrees. The guy adds one more condition. The loser has to perform a traditional women's dance at his older brother's ceremony. Yi Chang-yi is boiling with anger. That brat dared to mock him? But he agrees anyway. Great, it's a deal. Soho warns him not to chicken out. The man replies, he should have been the one to say that to the guy. Employee. A son, a 9th-rank Money Pavilion staff member, thinks they've gotten too heated over this, while Yi Chang-yi yells at him to stay out of a men's fight. And the son feels hurt. After all, he's the eldest here. Voices of the arguers can be heard from the house. They decide to go to the chief inspector right away. Yuso Ak, sitting at the table, carefully studies the papers and asks Soho if he really did all this himself, since few pavilion chiefs could handle such work. Soho's face, standing behind Yi Chang-yi, beams with joy while the man realizes he's lost. He asks the chief inspector to take a closer look at the papers, convinced there's a mistake. Yuso Ak is outraged. How dare he doubt him? While Yi Chan-yi shouts that the chief inspector never approved his work on the first try, even after years at the Money Pavilion. So why did he approve the young apprentice's work when he just started training? The chief inspector's baton crashes down on the man's head, and Yuso Ak wonders, does he wear glasses just for show? Soho believes the issue isn't the man's skills, but the chief inspector's unrealistically high standards. A guy's hand rests on Yi Chan-yi's shoulder as he says he's patiently waiting for his dance. Soho leaves the room, ignoring the man's attempt to stop him. The door closes behind him, but Yi Chang-yi keeps watching her. Soho walks along, radiating pure joy with every step. He stops because of someone's comment. It seems he's in a good mood. The man who called out to him keeps saying that all he's doing is making his parents and older brother worry about his health, while he somehow manages to have fun. The second son of the Silver Sea Trade Guild leader, En Jin-ho, spits out insulting words at the young man with contempt. Before Soho's eyes appears his severed head against the backdrop of a blazing fire. The guy stops, looking a bit embarrassed and confused. He tries to calm his brother's anger by softly saying his name. But he's angrier than ever. Why is he pretending to be so friendly? Does he want to die? Soho remembers. It's true. Back then he and his brother weren't on good terms. En Jin-ho says he was against the guy learning their trade because his father would worry even more if he got sick from overwork. Soho believes his brother is right. En Jin-ho wants to know when Soho is going to visit his father, and he should stop beating around the bush or pretending to be sick. The young man keeps scolding him angrily, warning that if he faints again like last time, he'll finish him off. Soho, bowing politely, replies that he will be careful. The brother looks at him suspiciously, then says he doesn't like the guy. Soho approaches the door. The guy is lost in thought and doesn't rush to open it. Leaning on his cane, he finally heads decisively toward the entrance. He has something to show them. According to Soho's past life memories, a fire will break out in the Money Pavilion in a few days. In his mind's eye, a building engulfed in flames appears. A low-ranking official on duty in the pavilion died in the fire, and all the documents were completely destroyed, causing significant losses. He recalls the remains of a small case they found at the fire site. Everything pointed to this being a carefully planned arson. Angry Yi Chan-yi sits at the table, holding papers in his hand. Looking at him, Soho thinks that to prevent this in advance, he needs to be able to move freely whenever he wants. A man angrily asks why he's staring at him, and the guy, smiling, replies, "Nothing, he's already leaving." He thinks that to have this opportunity, he'll need to change how others see him. The main headquarters of the Silver Sea Trading Guild. 3 people are sitting at a table covered with various dishes. The eldest son of the head of the trade guild, En Jin-ho, asks his middle brother how work is going at the Sunset Pavilion, noting it's nothing like the Seabreeze Pavilion, right? Jin-ho takes a sip from his cup and replies that, honestly, it's easier for him because he doesn't have to strain his brain, just his body. It seems he prefers working out in the field. Soho watches the brothers silently. Jonho asks the guy if he's also doing hands-on training at the money pavilion, and the guy confirms that he is. The young man says that learning is good, but there's no need to rush, and he worries that Soho might be overdoing it. The guy asks him not to worry. He's doing his best, and he believes his older brother has always been that way, even back then. He envisions Jonho's severed head mounted on a stake and thinks that's exactly why he never wants to witness such a sight again in his life. The middle brother jumps in. "What nonsense is this?" he says, within his limits. Besides eating and sleeping, does anything else really count as within his limits for him? Jonho angrily asks if he really thinks it's okay to talk to his younger brother like that, while Soho believes the young man has a terrible attitude. Jinho explains that it's all because his older brother always has his back, so the younger one doesn't know his place. He asks how much longer they'll have to deal with him, someone who's just a burden to the family. Jonho cuts him off. "Enough! This is going too far." His brother replies, "Too far? Didn't he just say what everyone already knows?" Pointing at Soho, Jinho says he coughs up blood during the monthly rituals and walks with a cane. What kind of job could he possibly have in the trade guild? The guy thinks bitterly. It's true, even as an adult. Hearing that still hurts him. But that's his problem to solve on his own, Soho calls out to his middle brother by name. He tells him not to address him that way, and the guy agrees, saying it's best to stop since his father will be here soon and he's sure the guild leader won't be thrilled to see such a pitiful scene. Turning to his older brother, Soho advises him to calm down too, and he agrees, admitting he got carried away. Jonho wonders, what was that? Though he always knew his younger brother was sharp. Looking at Soho, he thinks he seems unusually mature today. A voice calls out, "The chief is here," and Jonho replies excitedly, "He's back." Soho looks a bit confused. His eyes reflect a mix of pain and joy as he anticipates meeting his father. A man enters the room and approaches them. The elder son greets him, who apologizes for being late, explaining the meeting ran a bit long, and the young man replies it's all good, they've just gotten started. A father speaks to Soho, noticing the boy's face has turned red and asks if he's feeling unwell. Soho looks confused but says that everything is fine. He believes his face turned red because he witnessed his father dying right before his eyes in a past life. He seems to vividly see the gaunt face of his dying father, a moment that involuntarily blends with the man's current appearance in his mind. But now, standing before him is a lively man, Ongilsan, the head of the Silver Sea Trade Guild. Mentally, Soho tells himself to pull himself together. Such an emotional display is unlike him. He convinces himself that nothing has happened yet in this life, and he needs to focus solely on protecting the guild. For a moment he bows his head, hiding his face from prying eyes. Then he lifts his head firmly and says his father can see right through him. Actually, he does have something to say. Everyone present looks at him with surprise. A voice from the house calls out to Engil-san, telling his son to sit down so they can talk everything over. Soho asks if his father remembers what they talked about before he started training at the money pavilion, and his father replies, of course he does. They recall how Engil-san explained to his son that since he was born weak, he wasn't given full responsibility and only received a general understanding of the work without completing full training. Soho asks the question, but is it really allowed? One day he too will have to become the head of the pavilion. Jinho is surprised and wonders why he's suddenly saying things like that. The father agrees, acknowledging the valid point, and asks what his son means by it. The guy says he wants to take on all the responsibilities, including night shifts, just like his older brothers and other pavilion members. And Gilson says he does not allow it. Soho is taken aback by his words. He asks if the refusal isn't too harsh, and the father replies, what's not meant to be, simply won't be. And Gilson explains that what he dislikes most is the idea of his son working night shifts, which means staying awake all night and managing night security, something he believes is simply impossible given Soho's current condition. He agrees with everything else, but not the night shifts. The man asks, does your son understand this? Soho thinks this won't help. He won't be able to stop the fire at the money pavilion since he has to be on night duty the day it happens. The guy asks if his dad will let him work night shifts, if he can prove he can handle them physically. And Gilson, gripping his chopsticks tightly, replies, of course, but how is he going to prove it? Soho says it's a duel with Jinho, and the middle brother can't hide his surprise. He definitely didn't expect to hear that. Jonho is just as surprised as his brother. He thinks he must have misheard and asks, what did Soho just say? The father is stunned, silently looking at his younger son, unsure of what to say. Jinho wonders, has Soho completely lost his mind? The guy asks, what's wrong? Is he really afraid to lose? Jonho jumps up from his chair and asks Soho what he's talking about, while his younger brother wonders if there's some kind of problem. He explains to his relatives that since they are worried about his health, calming their concerns is a way of showing respect to his parents. Soho explains that he understands Jinho has recently become a top-tier fighter, and if he can stand his ground against him. Wouldn't that prove he's ready to handle all the responsibilities at the money pavilion? The middle son addresses the guildmaster. The young man says that now, having heard this, he understands his younger brother's words and asks if their father will allow the duel. Jonho tries to object, but Gilson interrupts him and gives the go-ahead to test Soho's capabilities. Seeing his older son's confusion, he says, "Let them compete. Soho will also learn to take responsibility for his words." Dipping his chopsticks into the dish before him, Gilson adds that sooner or later, everyone faces trials. The man believes that the moment has come for Soho. The guy thinks his dad is sure he doesn't stand a chance against Jinho, but that was to be expected. Gilson says that given the difference between him and Jinho, if he can hold out for at least a minute and a half, he'll earn the right to take full responsibility, including night shifts, and the man asks if he can manage it. Soho thanks his father for the opportunity he was given. Jonho grabs his head and sighs. He tells his younger brother that if things get too dangerous, he should surrender immediately. There's no shame in that. And Soho replies that he'll keep that in mind. Then he adds, honestly, he doesn't think that will be necessary. Jinho's face darkens with barely contained anger. The brothers stand face to face in the ring, ready to fight at any moment. Near the signal drum, Palgak and Yeunam stand holding mallets. The bodyguard points at the guy and asks, "What's the young master doing in the battle arena? He could barely walk not long ago." Soho waves back at her with a friendly greeting. Then he puts his index finger to his lips, signaling her to be quiet. Palgak places his hand on the girl's shoulder, assuring her that everything will be fine, to which she replies that he should be the one to stay okay. Jonho asks his father if he's worried, and his father replies, "Why would I be?" The older son explains how Jinho openly looks down on Soho, fearing his brother might lose control. The father says, so he means Jinho is looking down on them? He suggests just watching for now. Jinho looks down on his younger brother with a sense of superiority as he leans on a cane. Soho waits for the signal to start the fight. Yeunam doesn't understand what's happening. Why suddenly there's a duel between the young master and the second young master. She thinks the head and his sons have completely lost their minds. Remembering how Soho motioned for her to be quiet, she thinks this guy doesn't care how he looks to others. Yet he still acts like a charmer. Has someone possessed him? Gilson orders the drum to be beaten, and the bodyguard hesitantly asks, "What should I do?" The man almost spells it out. "Drum, you need to hit it." The girl is confused and unsure of what to do. Then she makes up her mind. Whatever happens, she hopes the young master will win. Yeunam strikes the drum with a mallet. Jinho, holding his blade in front of him, thinks harshly of his younger brother, believing he doesn't know his place. Looking at the guy holding a weapon in one hand and leaning on a club with the other, he thinks that as the youngest he got way too much love and now believes the whole world owes him. The brothers lock eyes, and the middle brother's gaze spells trouble. Jinho thinks that today, as Soho's older brother, he'll show him what reality really is, so the young man charges into battle. Little Jinho hears laughter, and someone saying they can't take their eyes off their baby brother lying in the cradle. Is it really that captivating? He reaches out his hand, and a small hand immediately reaches back. The boy turns to his father, saying his brother is so little, and Gilson, placing a hand on his head, replies, that's why he should take care of him in the future, since he's the older brother. Tiny Soho is lying in her crib. A young man grips his blade tightly, ready to face his brother's attack. Attacker Jinho mentally asks Gilson why he should do it, recalling that their father always expected both him and Jonho to be good older brothers, but never noticed that this troublemaker was never a good son. He thinks he can't do it, but he strikes anyway. The guy blocks with his blade. Soho wonders, at what level should he fight his brother? The guy uses the 12th form of the Snow Dragon sword technique, leaving Jinho far behind. The middle brother can't believe what just happened. Jonho looks on in surprise, unable to believe his eyes. The bodyguard and the servants standing by the drum open their mouths in surprise. Soho twists his ankle, loses his balance, and falls. Rising up, he smiles sheepishly and explains that it was his first time using the step technique, which threw him off balance. He had studied martial arts from books and, since his body had undergone some changes, this was his first real try. So he was lucky to dodge the attack but still fell, and Soho chuckles at his own clumsiness, using everything he can to keep anyone from guessing he knows how to fight. Jinho, glaring angrily at his brother, thinks, "Books? Lucky to dodge that? Is he kidding me?" He strikes Soho again, who by then has already gotten back on his feet. But once again, he fails to land a hit on his opponent. Jonho is amazed. How can Soho, this kid, stand up to Jinho? The middle brother recalls their father's words. Never take Soho's words lightly. He would never challenge him without thinking it through. And Gilson believes that his youngest son is the greatest genius in the entire history of the Silver Sea Trading Guild. The man also remembers the conversation. Though he said it, he didn't expect the guy to be that good. No matter how informal the match was, and knowing Jinho wasn't fighting at full strength, it still surprised him. He's amazed that Soho, who couldn't even keep his balance, has held his ground against Jinho, a top-tier master, for so long. And Gilson believes that if his son learns from a true master, he can't wait to see how much he'll grow. He admits that right now he's not worried about Soho. His main concern is Jinho's condition. The middle son blurts out, "Why? Why can't he hit the target?" The fight goes on, and as the young man watches Soho, he thinks he's heard that Soho is the greatest genius in the history of the trading guild. So is he planning to take the title of greatest battle genius from him too? Mentally, he insults his younger brother. He remembers as a boy peeking around the corner of a house, then turning to Soho and saying the adults were nowhere to be seen. The younger brother coughs, blood trickling from his mouth onto his outstretched hand. The father says that from now on the chief inspector will be training him in martial arts. He hesitates to say he wants to learn from his father, but his father explains that his brother is sick and Jinho needs to step aside so he can take care of him. His father told him then, holding the training sword tightly, that he was now the big brother. The young man recalls the chaos surrounding Soho, lying in bed in critical condition. He watches everything from the sidelines as voices shout, "Stop the bleeding! What's causing it?" Tears stream down this boy's face. It's all because of him. Someone is showing a bitten-off stub, saying it seems the second young master accidentally gave Soho a yang energy elixir. Tears stream down little Jinho's face as he tells his father he just wanted his younger brother to get better. The man pushes him away without even looking at him. Jinho sits down on the floor and quietly calls for his father, but he doesn't pay any attention. Ian Gilsan rushes to Soho's bedside, asking how his son is doing, and is told the child is in bad shape. Even if he survives, the internal injuries will be severe. Clenching his teeth and pressing forward with determination, Jinho mentally tells his brother that all their problems started because he was born weak. The brothers' blades clash and their duel continues for a while. Soho looks the young man in the eye, calls him brother, and says family can be complicated, to which Jinho replies, "What nonsense are you talking?" The guy explains that because this bond is closer than any other, they're destined to carry a deep-rooted rivalry, even if they spend their whole lives together. The middle brother asks again, What does he mean by that?" Then pushing Soho away, he says he's heard it all before and doesn't care. John-ho asks the bodyguard how much time is left, and she, holding an hourglass, replies, "About 9 seconds." Jinho channels his inner energy into the weapon. Now he grips the sword glowing with a fiery aura and says, "If the guy talks nonsense so confidently, it means things have been easy for him so far, but that won't last long," he promises. A father anxiously calls out to his son, "What are you doing? He must calm his emotions immediately." But the middle son ignores his shout and heads straight for Soho. The guy bitterly thinks about his brother's words. Nonsense then. He doesn't know anything at all. Before his eyes stands a burning building, lit by flames that reveal a kneeling figure with several arrows sticking out of his back. With his own blood, he traces words on parchment addressed to Soho. Family can be complicated, and because this bond is closer than any other, they are destined to carry a deep-rooted feud, even if they spend their whole lives together. Living with these thoughts, you slowly forget why you started hating someone in the first place. His hatred for Soho is just like that. Pain from feeling powerless to change anything, guilt towards him, and the sense of always being second, all of which turned into hatred. He's his only younger brother, and he's not to blame. In his final moments, Jinho asked for forgiveness for burdening his brother with his emotions, admitting he had waited too long to apologize. Jinho tied the blood-stained paper to the bird's leg. A bird soared over the burning house, carrying a message away. Above Jinho, a sword flashed through the air. Bowing his head, he says he doesn't deserve forgiveness. At that very moment, the blade severs his head. Watching his brother approach, gripping a sword engulfed in flames, Soho thinks to himself, he can't go through with this. Does he really believe it's all because of him? As he falls onto the ring's surface, he thinks they were just too young and foolish. Everyone gasped in fear as Jinho's sword whistled just above his younger brother's head. A puzzled young man stops. Has his brother lowered his sword? Soho sits down and says, maybe Jinho did add chi energy to the weapon, but his attack is just like the first one, too predictable. His hand clenches into a fist as he struggles with the pain of not being able to forgive his brother. He just lets it go. Soho's fist strikes Jinho's chest. The middle brother looks the guy straight in the eyes. Everyone watching the fight is stunned. The hourglass in the bodyguard's hands was running out of sand. She announces that time is up, and after 10 minutes of fighting, no one has won. So the young master is declared the winner, and Soho's hand relaxes. Morning, the money booth. The chief inspector, reading the papers, asks Yi Changyi, "So, the young master won?" To which he warns that no one must find out about it. Yu So-ak chuckles at his words, then says that the way he organized the documents is impressive, and he thinks Soho is a real gem. The chief inspector says he'll definitely recommend him as his assistant, even if he has to work 24 hours a day. Soho is training in the gym, holding a blade as he hones his skills in the 12th form of the Snow Dragon sword technique. He recalls the time his condition suddenly worsened after trying the elixir Jinho offered him. He remembers his middle brother, who watched the chaos at his bedside in horror. The young man remembers his father's visit, who ignored the middle son's remorse. In his mind, he saw the moment their blades crossed, and he echoed Jinho's words from a past life. Family can be complicated. He sees again the moment when the sword, knocked away by a powerful strike, flew off to the side. He remembers Jinho wiping the sweat dripping down his face and saying, "This is so frustrating." But what annoys the middle brother the most is that, alongside his anger, he feels a strange sense of relief. A young man asks the maid what Yen Soho is doing right now, and she claps her hands nervously. She says the chief inspector took him away. Jinho, skeptical, asks again, "The chief inspector? Why?" Soho is backed against the wall with nowhere left to retreat. In front of him stands the chief inspector with a manic gleam in his eyes, his assistant just visible behind him, as the man rubs his hands and says he's heard rumors that Soho is now taking on the full range of responsibilities. The guy confirms, "Yes, that's right. Is something wrong with it?" The chief inspector orders the woman carrying the guy over her shoulder to follow him. Yu So-ak announces that Soho is now his assistant, and with the Silver Sea Guild leader's approval, any resistance is pointless. Meanwhile, the guy recalls what caused the chief inspector's death in his past life, while the man, unaware of his thoughts, asks permission to briefly explain the guy's duties, a rhetorical question since Soho's mouth is tied. The chief inspector throws around technical terms and lists a bunch of duties, then asks, "Easy enough, right?" Personal assistant Yu So-aka Cho Yang-en, carrying the young man on her shoulder, says the young master has nothing to worry about. She assures that very soon he will start enjoying the process. Blocking the woman's energy points and gently lowering her to the ground, Soho, who freed her mouth, apologizes. He doesn't believe something like this is possible. The chief inspector gasps. Why is that? The guy is trying to come up with a believable excuse, knowing he can't explain the upcoming fire. He remembers it will happen between 3 and 5 in the morning, and to prevent the tragedy, he must be on night duty at that time. But if he's forced to work as this madman's assistant, he won't get out of the office before midnight, let alone handle night shifts. In his past job, he saw his former assistant run out of the money pavilion screaming, exhausted from constant overtime, and there's no guarantee he won't end up in the same situation. He thinks anything but this. Soho addresses the chief inspector, while his bodyguard escorts Cho Yang-un to a more comfortable spot. The young man says he's sure the real value of his hands-on training lies not in the work itself, but in gaining a deeper understanding of the processes, especially since he only started training 2 days ago. He insists there are better candidates for the assistant role, wants to understand the staff's regular tasks rather than rely on special treatment, while the bodyguard tries to revive the chief inspector's assistant. Soho keeps arguing with Yu So-aku, saying he heard that night shifts aren't part of an assistant's duties. But aren't night shifts the core of administrative work, the heart of the complex, real life of the staff? The chief inspector says he understands the young master's intentions, who then smiles gratefully and prepares to leave. But Yu So-ak says that in that case, the guy will have to handle both daily tasks and night shifts. Then he starts listing Soho's duties with technical terms, finishing by adding that he'll also manage tracking all other financial expenses. A guy dashes out of the money pavilion with a chase right behind him. A command rings out, "Grab him," and the armed forces of the trade guild manage to catch Soho. 3 days later, the guy checks today's duty roster, seeing Ye Chang-yi and Yon Soho are on shift, and he thinks today is the day the fire will break out in the money pavilion as he watches his colleague absorbed in paperwork. Soho thinks the incident happened on the night Ye Chang-yi was on duty and is glad he remembered that. The problem is he's really tired and just wants to sleep. He feels like every day he's pushing his own limits, never realizing a person could work this hard. On the table before him is a box of stimulant pills, the pride of the Silver Sea Trading Guild, designed to keep you alert for hours. The guy believes that the pure inner energy of the snowy plum helps him recover quickly through meditation and breathing exercises. But maybe that's exactly why he's getting overwhelmed with more and more tasks. Or is he just imagining it? When this is over, we need to get out of here immediately, the guy decides, his eyes landing on Cho Yang-un pleading with the inspector for more work, and he thinks he should run before he ends up like this crazy woman. AA guy speaks to Ye Chang-yi, who responds willingly but without taking his eyes off the documents he's studying. Soho says she's counting on him for today's shift. He replies that he's also counting on the guy. A guy sitting at his ledger thinks about how he just needs to get through tonight safely. Yi Chang-yi suggests having some tea before starting the shift and places the teapot in front of the guy. Soho asks, "Won't you have some tea?" And he replies, "I'm fine, thanks." They sit across from each other at the tables, fully absorbed in their work. A guy calls out to Yi Chang-yi, who immediately responds, "Yes?" Soho asks, doesn't he want to say something to him? The man replies that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. He gets up from the table saying he's going to make a round, and the guy asks, "Alone?" Yi Chang-yi, looking at him suspiciously, replies that he thinks this way will be better. The guy stands up and watches the man walk away. He calls for the bodyguard, surprised because he thought she was asleep. But she, sitting on the ceiling beam, denies that idea, saying she's been here from the start. When the guy asks why she always hides in strange places, she replies, "Who knows, maybe it's just a habit." He asks if she'd like to come downstairs and have some tea with him. Surprised, she asks why, then says she'll be down shortly. Yunam is drinking tea and says it tastes a bit bitter. Before finishing her sentence, she collapses to the floor. As expected, Soho says, there was sleeping pills involved. He makes the girl comfortable, then stretches and says he'd love to take a nap too. Rubbing his hands, Soho says now's not the time to sleep. It's time to start the rounds and catch the arsonist. A man walks down the hallway carrying a bucket, his face hidden in the shadow of his hood. After spilling the bucket's contents all over the room, the person tosses it aside. Then he opens a small case with a smoldering wick inside. For a moment, the man watches the small flame flickering in his hand. A voice sounds behind him, and its owner thinks the man looks anxious. The arsonist quickly turns around. At that moment, Soho snatches part of the case from his hands, and flames burst out from it. Looking at the trophy, Soho says the flame really burns bright, fueled strongly by oil. A young man approaches a man who is clearly well prepared, then says his name. Pavilion staff member Ah Sin. A man gazes gloomily at Soho. Then his face twists into a grimace of hatred as he asks the guy, "How did you find out?" Soho smiles and asks if he would believe what he saw about the future. "Ah, the son says the guy isn't going to tell him anything, right?" Soho asks, "Is that the only thing bothering him right now?" He says the man was planning to set everything here on fire, but he caught him. That's what he should be worried about. A faint smile appears on Asin's lips. Then he starts laughing, slaps his forehead, and admits the guy is right. He admits that the rumors about his sharp instincts weren't exaggerated, then pulls back his hood to reveal a dagger and asks, "Is the guy here alone?" Soho looks a bit puzzled by this unexpected turn of events. He beckons the opponent over with his hand, saying, "Yes, he's still single." His joke angers Asina. He shouts, "Did the guy really think he could fool around? Then let him die." He attacks Soho. Yi Chang-yi walks down the dark corridor, holding a flashlight in hand. A sudden noise makes him freeze, alert and cautious. His eyes narrow suspiciously. He remembers the young craftsman asking him if he had something to say. Yi Chang-yi replied that he didn't understand what it was about, and Soho said, "Oh, really?" The man asked how the guy did it, but Soho didn't immediately understand what he meant. Yi Chang-yi explains that the guy managed to get the documents approved by the chief inspector on his very first try, and this was only his second day of training. He's been working at the Money Pavilion for 3 years and never succeeded like this before. A man asks Soho, "What kind of magic is this?" A guy, smiling, asks if that's why he looks like he swallowed a ruler. Yi Chang-yi shouts indignantly, asking when he ever looked like that. And Soho replies, "Who is he trying to fool?" The guy doesn't think it's about him being special or unique. He explains that he tried not just to complete the tasks given, but to understand what the chief inspector was really aiming for. The man listens closely as Soho explains that working just to tick a box turns into work for the sake of work. Soho mentally stops himself. He sounds like an old man, and adds aloud that he learned it from his father. Yi Chang-yi slaps his forehead. It's wrong, but it hurts his pride. Soho says there's nothing impossible. Such emotions can be a great motivation for growth. He quickly explains to the man that his father taught him that too. Yi Chang-yi stands up and says he'll go make the rounds, and Soho asks, "Alone?" The man replies, thinking this way will be better. Walking down the corridor, he thinks that although Soho is the heir to the head of the trade guild, who would have expected a newcomer to surprise them? Maybe the future of the Silver Sea really depends on him. Yi Chang-yi remembers the guy asking if he was ready for the dance and thinks that sometimes he can be really annoying. He walks up to the door with a sign that reads, "Break Room." Taking a jar from the shelf, he thinks there's nothing better than a cup of hot tea when your mind is in chaos. He should have accepted the offer earlier. He sighs. It's all his pride. He looks at the jar in his hand with surprise. Yi Chang-yi is surprised to find oil stains on it, something he hadn't noticed before. Soho dodges the enemy's strike, narrowly avoiding the dagger at the last second. Clenching his fist, the guy says he just realized that fighting Ah-sun is much easier compared to his brother Jin-ho. He strikes the man using a technique from the Snow Dragon's fist style. The opponent, caught off guard and unable to dodge, is disoriented. Looking at the guy, he wonders, what's going on? Wasn't he supposed to be terminally ill? Soho strikes again, leaving the man completely confused. He can't believe what's happening. It feels like just a dream to him. His hand touches the mahjong tiles. He reflects on his dead-end job and aimless life. A man makes his choice. Instead of simply living his life from birth to death, he decides to stake it all on a single 1-inch mahjong tile. He angrily throws the tiles around, shouting that this is a scam and how it's possible that he didn't get a single decent one. The son grabs the bald tough guy by the chest, shouting that it's all his fault. Did he really fake the tiles? Does he even realize how much money that cost him? He's thrown out the door with a bang, the door slamming shut behind him, while a polite voice mockingly says, "Please, come again." He lies there, not even trying to get up, tears streaming down his face, thinking, since when did his life become so insignificant, so fleeting and fragile? A man approaches him and says, what a pitiful state the warrior Ah is in. The money pavilion employee, without even trying to stand, grabs the man's leg and promises to pay everything back. He even tripled the bet. The man saw it all himself. He says he works for the Silver Sea Trading Guild and can cover the losses. The man says, of course he knows it all. The son is a capable employee. He adds that this is exactly why he wants to offer him a chance to work together. Son's eyes roll back as he thinks, it's all so pointless. Everything feels meaningless. He takes a hard hit to the face, and Soho's voice rings out. No one told him he was allowed to pass out. As he keeps beating the man, the guy says he's no longer human. Soho, his eyes full of inner energy, says, son, servant of truth, who only speaks honestly when beaten. Then he asks, did the man understand him? The guy demands an answer, while the son looks at him nervously. Around 4 or 5 in the morning, the moon is still visible in the sky. Soho stands before the group, apologizing for waking everyone up so early, hoping they'll understand he had a good reason. He's sure they've already received the message. Pointing to a man hanging by his hands from a tree, Soho reports that they just caught someone trying to set fire to the money pavilion, and it turns out this was planned by the Lotus Courtesan House. The guy says that the watermill at the pavilion chief's place, where he tied up Ah-sun, really helped get confessions from the suspect. A beaten arsonist begs them to just end his life. And Gilsan, head of the Silver Sea Trade Guild, asks for clarification. So he's saying the Lotus Courtesan's house planned this? The man asks for confirmation. Is the son sure about this? The guy believes his father truly feels the full weight of this betrayal right now. The Lotus Courtesan House is one of Hubei's top 5 escort pavilions, and they have been longtime partners. At the Seabreeze Pavilion, Chok Benchol, holding a smoking pipe, says that if he's not mistaken, the Lotus Courtesan House owes them a significant sum, and he believes they tried to erase all memory of the debt by setting a fire. And Dami, head of the Sunset Pavilion, believes it would be hard to identify the culprit even if they managed to do so, as many people owe them favors. The head of external relations and leader of the Silver Wind Squad, Go Ilpin, says he's glad no matter what. He says that if it weren't for the young master, they would have been asleep, completely unaware of the fire. Soho thinks he's sure about it, and Yon Chanyi would have been burned alive, as he drank tea laced with a sleeping potion. The guy says enough with the compliments, and believes they need to talk about their next steps, and Go Ilpin agrees with him. The man expected Soho wouldn't miss a chance to brag. Chok Benchol approves, thinking the guy gets straight to the point without wasting time. Yendami is glad that Soho remains calm, even though the incident is quite serious. Everyone present agrees that the guy is definitely talented. The chief inspector asks if they can first take the arsonist down from the tree, and the man admits he feels uneasy knowing he's hanging there. After all, he's still a person. Soho didn't expect such remarks from Yuso Aka, and agrees with his opinion. Sin, now freed, is on all fours, regaining consciousness. The chief inspector crouches beside him, asking how he feels and if he's alive, to which the arsonist nods and thanks him for his concern. Yuso Ak delivers a crushing blow, saying, if he's really alive, then let him explain what this nonsense is all about. He keeps hitting Ah-sun, saying he worked late last night and now he's the only one being undermined, showering the man with insults. Soho then suggests everyone go inside and pretend they didn't see the ugly scene. The guy actually suggests setting the money pavilion on fire. Everyone sitting at the table turns to him together. The chief inspector nearly snaps but catches himself, politely asking what was just said. Yeon Gilsan urges calm and suggests listening to what the young man has to say, as this is where his job begins. At the Sunset and Dami Pavilion, placing a cup on the table, he says, what an impressive plan. Lies distort the truth, and falsehood twists reality. Did he really mean to quote that? Soho agrees with her. That's right, they need to cover the truth with a lie. He believes they need to convince the Lotus Courtesan's house that their plan worked, which will reveal their true intentions. Everyone present agrees with Soho's plan, except the chief inspector, who can't understand why they want to burn down such a beautiful building and thinks it's madness, wondering if they even realize how much it costs to build a brand new one. Since most people supported the guy's idea, they decided to burn down the money pavilion building, carefully moving the sleeping bodyguard and all the documents to a safe place. Watching the fire, Soho thinks it burns just like the time when his whole family and he died. But now it's different. This fire is a step up the ladder to success for their trading guild, even if Yuso Aku has to work a bit harder than usual. Seeing the chief inspector stressed over expenses, he thinks it might be a good idea to send him on a short break. Soho asks Ye Changyi when the payment is due for the Lotus Courtesan House, and he replies, looking at a book, that it's next month during the Buddha's birthday celebration. The guy says they'll let the situation develop until the right moment, believing they'll get the money in another way. 1 month later, one of the top 5 most famous escort lounges in Hubei. A man walks down the street and overhears someone talking about the recent big fire at the Silver Sea Trade Guild, and another person replies that many have heard about it. But what exactly happened there? As the man approaches the mansion, he overhears people talking about how all the important contracts have vanished without a trace, including the documents related to the Lotus Courtesan's house that were kept in that pavilion. And some find it strange, since everyone knows they owed the trade guild a large sum. The man hears a suggestion that the Lotus Courtesan's house used the fire as an excuse to avoid paying their debt. The manager of the Lotus brothel, So Su-chan, thinks it's nonsense. Burning the documents doesn't erase the debt, and trust is crucial in business. Doesn't the boss understand that? He believes this must be stopped, and soon he bows his head in greeting to the head of the house. Su-chan looks at the woman's hand with surprise, realizing he almost stepped on it. Looking around, he sees women lying on the floor and wonders, what's going on? An empty pitcher flies toward him. The head of the house asks, what's going on? Has he never seen women faint before? Su-chan asks angrily. Did he raise his hand against the geisha again? Reminding that the previous head of the house had forbidden it. The interlocutor dismissively waves his hand, asking to skip this and get straight to the point. The casually dressed head of the Lotus brothel, Paek Bok, lounges in his chair, saying that So Su-chan makes him want to kill him. The manager's face darkens as he silently insults Paek Bok, thinking he should have quit a long time ago. He says he learned that the head of the house doesn't plan to repay the debt to the Silver Sea Trading Guild. Even if the documents were lost, this could damage their long-standing business partner's trust. Paek Bok listens silently to So Su-chan. Then he dismissively waves his hand again. Doesn't care. The deadlines have passed anyway. He's sure it would have been a problem if they knew, so he tells the manager to get out. He tries to argue, but the head of the house cuts him off again, saying the trade guild remains silent and orders So Su-chan to leave once more. The manager yells that the former head of the building would never have acted like this. A shadow falls across Paek Bok's face. He tells the manager to come closer. As the man approaches the chair, the head of the house is frantically searching behind her, muttering that it should be around here somewhere. And Su-chan asks, what? Suddenly, Paek Bok smashes a bottle over his head and showers him with curses. A man falls to his knees, covering his face with his hands, while Paek Bok stands over him and asks, so, who's the head of the household now? He kicks the manager and repeats the question. Who's the head of the house, him or his father? As he sits back down, Paek Bok says that So Su-chan does nothing but get in his way. As he sits down, the man addresses the manager, telling him to listen carefully, or if he's already lost the ability, and adds that once this is settled, they'll start working with the Dawn Trading Guild. He makes the geisha sitting at his feet lift her head, trembling with fear. Tears stream down from her closed eyes. Paek Bok says their demands are a bit annoying, but as we know, the Dawn Trading Guild is one of the top 3 largest guilds and a direct partner of the Murim Alliance, also connected with the White Sky Trading Guild. He's sure that once he figures this out, everyone comparing him to his father will finally shut up, and it also means they won't be working with the Silver Sea anymore. Paek Bok, smiling, adds, instead they'll just destroy them. The head of the Lotus Courtesans hears someone call out to him. Master! The man flies into a rage. Breaking in without asking? Do they want to die? The manager falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness, saying it's urgent, and reports that representatives of the Silver Sea Trading Guild have arrived with their full guard. Paek Bok's expression changes. He clearly didn't expect things to take this turn. Meanwhile, a group of men approaches the door of the room where he is, and Gilson is surprised no one stopped them, given they showed up uninvited, and Soho says he doubts the guards have it easy here since Dom can't even pay his business partners. A guy's hand rests on the doorframe as he says the Lotus Courtesan house is a perfect example of how not to run a business, but either way, it doesn't look like they're expecting any guests. He decides they'll just walk in and slightly opens the door. A group of armed men follow Soho, who slings a heavy metal-studded club over his shoulder as he declares, "The collectors are on the job." Soho strides forward swiftly, spinning a baton in his hand. The bodyguard following him doesn't understand what he's so excited about. Soho kicks open the door to the hall, the others following him, and right away the guy demands their money back. The father, Yin Am, and the others accompanying him look at the young man in disbelief. So it was all about the money? The head of the Lotus Courtesans, Paek Bok, asks, who is he? The guy's gaze shifts downward. He sees a beaten woman lying at his feet. His expression hardens as he turns to his bodyguard, Yunam. A young woman helps the geisha to her feet, as Soho slowly approaches the head of the house, who says he mistook him for just another deadbeat. Slinging his club over his shoulder, he went on. It turned out that Pek Bok was a hopeless and worthless scoundrel. Soho wonders. He's sure the late owner of the house would have been proud of them, or at least that's what he thinks. The man's face darkens. He takes his sword and steps down from the raised platform where his chair stands. Pek Bok points his sword at the guy, who calmly waits to see what happens next. One of the men with him tries to rush to his aid, but Ngilson stops him with a wave of his hand. Soho tells the head of the brothel that if he's drawn his sword, he should attack. Or is he just looking to talk? Maybe he's waiting for him to make the first move. The guy makes a hand gesture, inviting an attack. Pek Bok insults him and raises his sword. He rushes towards Soho, but Soho swings his club in response. The head of the house's face is twisted with anger, while the young man remains completely calm, a faint smile playing on his lips. Soho easily blocks the sword strike. Pek Bok, caught off guard by his unexpected agility, looks puzzled. He takes a step back, putting more distance between them. The man can't believe the guy blocked his punch. He'd heard the second son of the Silver Sea Trade Guild leader was a top fighter. But this guy? Soho sneers, wondering, what's going on? Did something go wrong? His words enrage the opponent, who shouts a threat and lunges back into the attack. Pek Bok swings his sword through the air, and a guy's voice calls out, "Not so fast!" The man turns his head toward the voice, while Soho keeps giving orders, now telling the opponent to grit his teeth. A man standing behind the head of the house delivers a crushing blow to his head with a club. Pek Bok, releasing his sword, swiftly rushes toward the floor. Flat on the carpet, he lies still with his arms stretched out to the sides. Soho looks at him thoughtfully and says, "What a loud noise. Does he have an empty head?" Before Pek Bok's eyes, everything is blurry. He barely makes out the face of Yeun-am leaning over him, with Soho's figure faintly visible behind her. The girl asks if he might be dead, but the guy replies calmly that he didn't hit him hard enough to kill. The bodyguard firmly slaps the man on the cheeks, demanding that he get up. The first thing the head of the house sees upon waking is the face of the chief inspector of the trade guild, Silver Sea. Yuso Ak, wearing a broad smile, asks if he's finally awake. Pek Bok screams and tries to jump to his feet. The chief inspector says, "Was he really scared just by looking at him? How dare he stab him in the back?" The head of the brothel, with a huge swelling on his head, still sits on the floor as Soho stands before him, holding a club over his shoulder, demanding he look at him and saying this isn't the first or even the second time he's delayed payments for a year and angered people so much. They only tolerated it out of respect for the house owner. Does he really think he can keep cheating them? Pek Bok asks, what payment is he even talking about? Papers fly straight into his face, thrown with a strong hand. They fall to the floor. Soho explains that these are the records of all the goods their trade guild supplied to the Lotus courtesan's house, and it looks like not a single coin has been paid yet. The guy shrugs, holding a baton in one hand, and says, "According to the contract, this means we have to hand over the Lotus brothel, right?" Beaten but not broken, Pek Bok holds up a document and says the guy is talking nonsense. Does he really think he won't spot a fake? Is he trying to pin fake debts on him? Soho listens silently as the man rants. The head of the house claiming he knows all about their fire at the money pavilion, where all the documents were burned. So this is their method, extorting money without any proof? The bodyguard says, "This is disgusting," while the chief inspector pulls a knife from his sleeve and says he can't take it anymore. A baton crashes loudly to the floor and a guy's voice asks, "Is this a fake?" Soho holds the document right up to Pek Bok's nose, telling him to open his eyes wide and take a good look, saying he sees an old worn-out seal, unless he's just imagining it. The guy wonders what he'll do if it's not a fake, or maybe they should take it to small claims court. Meanwhile, the madam of the brothel curses silently. Could it really be the genuine article? He doesn't get it. He heard them talking about losing all the documents. Could the Dawn Trade Guild really have made such a big mistake? Pek Bok, looking over the document, thinks, no, they said the work was done. Could they really be lying to him? But why would they? Soho makes a creaking sound and the man asks, "What is he doing?" The guy replies mockingly, "What does it sound like?" It's the noise Pek Bok makes when he's trying to think. Soho keeps talking. If the head of the courtesan house had managed it properly, he could have lived comfortably. How desperate must he have been to go this far? Pek Boku has nothing to say to him. The guy standing over him wonders. Does he usually mess things up behind others' backs, or is he wrong? The man who approached them said he had something to say. Soho looks at him, trying to figure out who he really is. A man clutching a book to his chest is supported under the arm by one of the young man's companions, who introduces himself as So-Su-chan, the chief manager of the Lotus courtesan house. Soho believes he's the one who turned a failing business into one of the top 3 brothels in Hubei. All thanks to his outstanding management skills. And to think such talent was wasted here all along. Soho bows politely, says he's pleased to meet you, and introduces himself by name. Suchan suggests skipping the formalities, and asks the guy to take a look at the book he's holding, explaining it's the accounting ledger of the Lotus Courtesan House, then asks him to open it to page 7, and mentions that a new branch has recently opened. Pekbok cuts him off, showering him with curses and threats, and orders him to be quiet. But suddenly he falls silent, his gaze growing tense. The sword of Yunam, held behind him, presses its tip against the man's neck. Suchan asks Soho for permission to speak with Master Pek, and he agrees. The chief manager asks the head of the courtesan house to stop, telling him to accept that it's over, leaving the man stunned by his words. Meanwhile, Suchan keeps talking, believing that Pekbok has gone too far. Unlike the previous head of the house, Pekbok had rather mediocre skills, and the staff often talked about his frequent mistakes with orders, thinking that while he looked just like the former head, he clearly lacked the same smarts. Pekboka was always compared to his father, and even small mistakes were seen as major failures. Perhaps this is what shaped him, believes So Suchan. He remembers how painfully he endured Pekbok's gossip, trying to explain that his mistakes weren't intentional, and recalls Pekbok telling him that everyone keeps talking about his father. But he can't stay in that position forever, can he? Looking at the man sitting on the floor, the manager thinks fate simply pushed him to break down. Suchan says he knew Pekbok would never be like his father, yet he kept clinging to the past, which turned out to be a waste of time and energy. Now he must face the consequences of his actions. And with that, the manager turns and heads for the exit. The head of the house showers him with insults, while the manager tells Soho to make sure he watches the recordings he mentioned earlier. He hands the book to the guy, who thanks him. Soho believes he had his reasons, but now everything is settled. He reads the records, and as he suspected, they reveal something illegal. To his surprise, he learns that Pekbok runs an underground gambling den, which now explains why the House of Courtesans was in such poor shape, and why their guild payments were delayed. Ngilsan asks if he found something, and Soho confirms. Just as expected, the money was being spent elsewhere. Bowing respectfully, he thanks his father for the trust. A man recalls his son's words. He started this, so he must see it through to the end. Ngilsan tells his son he did a great job. A young man, holding a book tightly, mentions another suspicious detail, and asks his father if he wants to take a look. But Yeon Gilson replies it's unnecessary since he already knows about it, and the son is referring to the new pavilion built by Chief Beck. The man says he first thought it was just a rumor, but now he realizes it might actually be true. They both believe the Dawn Trading Guild is behind this. So Suchan, Soho, and Yeon-am walk along a winding path through the trees. The guy is thinking. He knows that the Dawn Trading Guild is connected to the White Sky Guild, which answers directly to the Mirim Alliance. Watching the manager walking ahead, he tries to figure out what the Alliance is planning this time. He is called and he turns to his bodyguard. A girl wonders what has him so deep in thought since morning that he doesn't even respond, and the guy apologizes. The bodyguard asks why he needs to go to the pavilion, and urges him to explain something so she can help if needed. He smiles and says he is not sure, silently asking her forgiveness, but feeling he needs to figure this out on his own. Yunam angrily thinks about whether she should just hit the guy once, while the man points them toward the pavilion being built by Master Baek. As Soho examines the building, he chuckles in surprise. It's just an ordinary pavilion, contrary to his expectations, but the air feels strangely cold. Soho asks the girl if she's noticed anyone around. She says no, and the guy suggests they go inside. They enter the house, and the man says no one is inside because they were ordered not to enter until tomorrow. Suchan steps forward and crouches down, saying he had noticed something strange here before. The guy asks him to stand behind him. His hand rests on the hilt of the blade, while the bodyguard already grips her sword tightly. Without taking his hand off the blade, the guy challenges, "Come out." A girl wrapped in a cloak approaches them, her lower face covered by a piece of cloth. Soho thinks she was barely noticed. He asks who she is and demands that she give her name. The girl reaches for the sword strapped to her back, and the guy realizes she prefers to fight. Soho asks the bodyguard to take care of the manager. A girl gripping a sword tightly charges at a boy. He is amazed at how fast she moves. Drawing his blade from the sheath, Soho steps back swiftly, dodging his opponent's strike. The girl keeps attacking him, and he has to defend himself. Soho thinks the stranger moves with ease and strikes with impressive strength, a true master. Their blades clash, and the boy catches the scent of orchids coming from the girl. At that moment, Ye-unam shouts a warning and swings his sword at the stranger, but she manages to jump back in time. A girl stands by the doorway as the confused manager steps back. Stepping outside, she turns around and pauses for a moment. Then she throws a bomb into the back of the room where Soho and Ye-unam are and jumps outside. Soho watches as the enemy's thrown object bounces across the floor, realizing it's an incendiary bomb. The guy lunges forward, shouting for his companions to duck down. An explosion sounds, and for a moment, the room is filled with smoke, making it impossible to see anything. As the smoke clears, Soho and his bodyguard approach the manager, asking how he is. Sitting on the floor and shielding his head with his hands, he replies that he's okay. The guy thought it was a firebomb, but it turned out to be a smoke bomb. He realizes that her only goal was to escape. Standing in the doorway, watching the direction the girl ran off to, he thinks it would have been tough for them if she had shown everything she was capable of. The manager points to the spot where he had previously crouched down, revealing a hatch, and says he doesn't know why Master Paek made it, but it's an underground passage leading to the main building of the Lotus Courtesan House. The guy steps closer, thinking, an underground passage hidden beneath the floor? It seems really strange to him. He turns to Yeun-am and asks, "Are you guarding the entrance?" She replies, "Got it." Soho grabs the small handle on the hatch cover, convinced that the girl hiding her face is somehow connected to it. Lifting the hatch cover, the guy thinks to himself, so what his father said was true. On the hatch cover, he sees the emblem of the Dawn Trading Guild, the main headquarters of the Silver Sea Trading Guild, Pavilion Invul, and Gilson says, "So there's an underground tunnel from there that connects to the Lotus Courtesan's house," and his younger son found the Dawn Trade Guild's emblem there. The head of the trade guild sits at the table, with Soho and the chief inspector on either side, cups of tea before them, and Yusoak thinks that if it's such a big concern, they can simply put the courtesan house up for sale. The guy objects, "Absolutely not!" The men look at him in surprise, and the chief inspector asks, "Why not?" Soho explains that, as they already know, the courtesan's house is one of the top 5 most famous escort venues in all of Hubei, a place frequently visited by the wealthy elite and high-ranking officials. He believes they will often have chances to connect with them and earn their trust, and Gilson agrees, noting they'll also quickly gain valuable information, and the chief inspector adds that they can even distribute their guild's goods there. Soho says exactly that. If they keep the current CEO, they won't have to try hard. Everything will run smoothly, and in the long run, it's a clear win. Yusoak supports him and fully agrees with the guy. After reviewing the accounting books, the chief inspector realized that he truly has exceptional skills. Licking his dry, nervous lips and flashing a spark in his eyes, he adds something that instantly makes you want to take him in and give him plenty of work. The chief manager of the Lotus Brothel, So Suchan, shudders suddenly. What is this strange chill running down his spine? Looking at the chief inspector, Soho thinks Yusoaka has a scary stare, and Gilsan says his son handled the situation well and, as a thank you, gives him some time off. The man adds that the situation with the money pavilion was tough for him too, so let him rest peacefully for a few days. The chief inspector, hearing those words, flies into a rage and pounds his fists angrily on the table. He glares at the guy, trying to make him think of only one thing, saying no to his father. Yen Gilson, clutching his head, tells his son he'll handle the chief inspector himself and that he can leave. Soho gets up and heads for the door. The guy is already in the hallway when Yusoak suddenly appears in the doorway, reaching out maniacally to grab him by the collar, but Yon Gilson stops him. Walking past his bodyguard Soho, who shudders and says it gives him goosebumps. He looks like a ghost who died from overwork. The girl, confused, asks, "Huh? There's a ghost in the pavilion?" Soho says no and suggests she forget what she heard and follow him, leaving the girl puzzled. What's this talk about a ghost? The guy's thoughts drift back to the hatch where he found the Dawn Trade Guild emblem. He thinks that in the past, high-ranking officials were friendly to the Murim Alliance and Bek Bok, possibly because they were recruited in that secret place, which now belongs to him, or rather, their trade guild. Soho thinks they've completely outsmarted those scoundrels from the Alliance, a huge grin spreading across his face while Yeun-am looks at him puzzled. Maybe the ghost has driven him crazy. Soho remembers the girl whose face was hidden behind a mask. If only they had caught her, they could have learned more. The guy tells the bodyguard they won't tell his father what happened in the pavilion, thinking there's no point in worrying him unnecessarily. He keeps thinking about the stranger, convinced she's a martial arts master far beyond Bek Bok. And if their guilds ever face the Murim Alliance head-on, they'll likely encounter even tougher opponents. Soho feels he needs to visit his past life's teacher, maybe even today, as the man's face appears in his mind, saying that if only he had started patrolling a couple of hours earlier that day, his son would still be alive. The guy stops and turns to the bodyguard, asking what the date is today, but she doesn't immediately understand what he means. Soho is swearing, "It's happening today." A young man sprints through a bamboo grove, chased by Yeun-am and another man. The young man has only one thought racing through his mind. He can't be late. Today, the teacher's eldest son will die in an accident right here in this bamboo forest, a tragedy that happened while all the adults were at work. Turning around on the move, he shouts to his bodyguard that he'll go first and she should follow the doctor. The girl replies, "Okay," while the doctor struggles to keep up with them. Soho rushes forward. No one expected the older son, playing with his younger brother in the grove to fall and be fatally pierced by a bamboo shoot. A shout reaches the guy. "Brother!" He immediately rushes to the spot where the voice was coming from. A boy lies in a clearing, a bamboo shoot poking out of his body, and his younger brother, crying, asks what he should do. He's trying to stop the bleeding from the wound with his hands. In desperation, he screams, "Anyone, please help!" Soho stops and listens carefully to figure out where the scream is coming from. The boy begs his older brother to forgive him, saying it's his fault and that he shouldn't have wanted to play in the forest. Soho places his hand on his head, insisting that he's not to blame. The guy says he only came because he heard his call for help. The boy sniffs, and Soho tells him he did a great job. A bodyguard appears, carrying a doctor in her arms. While the doctor examines the wound, Soho tries to calm the boy by holding him close. Patting him on the back, he mumbles, There, everything's fine. Everything's okay." He's grateful they made it on time and offers a prayer to God. The medical pavilion of the Silver Sea Trade Guild. A boy with bandages lies in bed while his younger brother sits nearby on the floor, resting his head on his hands. Soho stands a little apart, watching them and thinking that a bamboo shoot puncture is quite serious. And if they had been even a little late, the outcome would have been grim. Maybe in this life he'll see a teacher smile more often, but he can't even begin to imagine the pain parents feel when they lose their children. Looking at his brothers, he thinks to himself that this is why he'll keep changing the future, little by little, again and again. He thinks the teacher should show up by now, just as the front door opens. A man bursts into the room, rushing to the bed and shouting, "Hanjin!" Soho thinks, as expected, he just got back from a mission. He greets and then stops. Approaching him, the young man introduces himself as Yen Soho from the Silver Sea Trading Guild and explains that while walking through the bamboo grove, he was lucky enough to find the boy and bring him here. A man bows deeply, thanking the young man, realizing that without him, a disaster would have happened. Soho says there's no need to thank him. He just got lucky finding the kids. Looking at his younger brother, now asleep with his head on the bed, he says that he stayed by Henjin's side and stopped the bleeding. A man's hand gently rests on the forehead of an older boy lying with his eyes closed. He looks at the child with tenderness, a gentle smile appearing on his lips. The man bows again and says the guy is very humble, not knowing how he could ever repay him. Soho clasps his hands in his palms. He tells him not to worry, that the boy was meant to live and there's no need to thank him so much, leaving Soho confused. He didn't expect to see the teacher like this. A man looks at the young man's hands. Then he turns to him, calling him a young master. He asks, "Is it okay if they step away?" Soho looks worried. Something's wrong? The boy looks at the teacher with a questioning gaze. The man replies that he feels it's not right to say this here. He explains that it's due to the nature of the guy's body, and Soho looks stunned. A nighttime forest with the moon shining above. A man apologizes for making the young man come so late and without any protection, but Soho reassures him it's fine, while the teacher suggests he probably doesn't want others to hear what he's about to say. The man looks at him thoughtfully, then says the guy is smart. Soho wonders if the inner energy gained from the crystal-clear snowy plum has changed his body, and if his teacher has noticed it. A man asks if he has ever heard about the spiritual harmony of the star dragon. Soho watches the other person with a patient, expectant gaze. He says it seems like the guy understands what's going on. For a moment, the man closes his eyes, as if trying to gather his thoughts. He tells the guy not to worry, and the guy, a bit surprised, waits to hear more. The speaker says that when he touched his hand earlier, he felt a strong yin energy inside, which he recognized because he had studied the ice art himself. That's when he realized the young man possessed the spiritual harmony of the star dragon. Soho asks, does he know anything about it? The man says he's met someone like that before, and the guy is surprised. What? Does he mean someone with the same condition as him? The interlocutor responds affirmatively, expressing regret but saying he can't reveal who it is, to which Soho replies that he can only assume the man has his reasons. He says, anyway, the reason he brought him here. The man says he wants to know if the guy is willing to learn the ice art he's familiar with. Soho knew this was coming but pretends to be surprised. The interlocutor continues, considering he saved his son, their meeting, and that he also shares the spiritual harmony of the star dragon, it feels like destiny to him. The teacher explains that this is exactly how he wants to repay Soho for everything he's done for him. Bowing slightly, he asks the young man for permission to teach him. Everything is going so smoothly that Soho can hardly keep a smile off his face. The young man bows in return, asks to be taught, and calls the other person his teacher. The man didn't expect him to agree so quickly. Soho explains that Prosperity is a trusted organization that has long maintained a relationship with their guild, and he would never pass up the chance to learn from one of its leaders. The man replies, all right, then they'll start training tomorrow morning. The next morning, Soho and the teacher sit on the steps leading to the house, and the man says, this spiritual technique is called the divine art of the great Yin Ice Sea. Placing his hand on the young man's back, He explains that internal energy is already flowing in his dantian, and now he just needs to remember this current flow and reproduce it on his own. He keeps his hand on Soho's back, and beneath it, the inner energy intensifies. So they sit quietly for a while. The guy closes his eyes and rests his hands on his knees as the Soho aura surrounds them both. The teacher thinks all of this is very strange. The guy's meridians are already open. He pulls his hand away from Soho's back. A man calls him a young master, and the boy slowly opens one eye. The teacher asks, "Does he already know about this spiritual technique?" Soho replies, "No way, I had completely forgotten that I had opened all my meridians." A man asks if there was ever a moment when his life was in danger because of his yin energy. The guy carefully explains that he recently took a miracle drug that almost killed him, and he thinks he's mostly telling the truth because it was really tough. The teacher believes this explains everything, saying the spiritual technique was invented long ago when their ancestors faced deadly cold and their survival instinct kicked in. He says it seems something similar happened to him. Soho hates lying but can't tell the truth because he thinks the teacher would have a hard time accepting it, and the man gently touches his shoulder to snap him out of his thoughts. The guy turns his head toward him. The teacher says this is a good sign, and since the young man is ready to use the spiritual technique, they can start training endurance and strength right away. Soho is surprised right now. He clearly didn't expect the training to progress this quickly. The teacher promises to push him so hard that he'll be begging for mercy, and the guy is scared by such enthusiasm. The man says he saved his son's life, so he's going to do everything he can to make sure his lessons help the guy hold on to his. Soho sits at the table, deeply focused on studying the papers. He works out with a full water tank strapped to his back. The young maid watches his every move with delight, while the bodyguard and Palgak stand a little apart. The guy is back to paperwork again. An endless cycle of work and training. He remembers the teacher saying he'll give him homework every day, and that he'll be practicing even while at work. Soho dreams of spending his upcoming vacation just lying in bed and doing absolutely nothing. Cho Young-eun's personal assistant approaches the chief inspector's desk to inform him that they have a visitor. Yu So-ak yells, "Can't she see he's really busy?" And she explains that this is Mr. Sun. The chief inspector relaxes. This is a different matter. He rises from his desk, stretches his shoulder, and heads for the door. He asks Soho what he's doing and tells him to get ready. Soho is a bit surprised. Is he coming along? Holding his head, the chief inspector says that if Mr. Sun is here, it means he needs to discuss something with him, which usually means even more paperwork. He explains to the guy that his desk is already buried in papers, so Soho will take care of the documents on this matter. If he talks it over with him directly and then repeats everything to the guy, it will just be a waste of time and totally ineffective. Soho thinks he needs to get out of here, and the chief inspector puts him in charge of everything because he's too lazy to do it himself. As they head to the exit, Yu So-ak tells his assistant to make sure the young master is all right. He promises to give her even more work when he returns, and the woman is thrilled. Cho Young-eun lunges at the guy, holding a rope in her hands. Several people sat around the round table, and En Gil-san, head of the Silver Sea Trade Guild, told the guests sitting opposite him that it had been a long time since they last met. Song Jang-ju, a landowner from Chunyang County in Hubei Province, confirms that this is true. The man is unsettled by the bound and struggling Soho at the table, who also has his mouth gagged. The chief inspector, noticing his gaze, asks him to forget about it, explaining that this is his slave. After a brief pause, Yu So-ak clarifies that he's a worker employed by him, but Sun Jung-ju feels the man almost said slave. Taking a sip from his cup, he says he's come to ask for their help, and Yeon Gil-san asks, "Is there a problem?" Setting his cup down on the table, the man explains that a few days ago, officials told him some of his land hadn't been taxed. He says he spoke with trusted contacts who told him that officials are looking for something. Sun Jung-ju believes there's been a misunderstanding. He thought that if he found what they were looking for, he could at least meet them and clear things up, while the homeowner listens quietly. A man explains that the object they're looking for is a doll that dances on its own at a certain time. Soho freezes. A doll that dances on its own? The guest tells them about a doll that dances on its own. Soho listens to him with surprise, even stopping his struggles to break free from the rope. The head of the Silver Sea Trading Guild snorts skeptically. A dancing doll. He firmly sets the cup down on the table, and Gil-san assures that he understands the situation their guest is in. Sun Jung-ju is waiting for him to continue his speech. The head of the Trade Guild says, "But could it be that official Po Chongsa is really the one who requested this item?" The guest reluctantly admits that Lady Chu is involved in this. A hush falls over the table. Then Yeon Gil-san says he's really sorry, but he doesn't think they can take this on, which clearly surprises Sun Jung-ju. Soho recalls everything he knows about Lady Chu. At some point, a special game became popular among noble ladies, who would choose a young girl once a month and take turns giving her challenges to find rare items. For example, they said to bring a golden flower. The loser had to host a lavish feast for all the other players. The winner was honored like an empress until the next round began. The woman who came up with and organized this game is Lady Chu, the wife of Po Chung's. She always inspired admiration and envy among women, with her jewels and lavish outfits sparking endless gossip. The game started as a brief and innocent pastime, but then it turned into a wild competition that even harmed ordinary people. Back then, the guy couldn't understand why high society was obsessed with such a trivial pastime. Now, he thinks he gets it. Their guest says he was unfairly slandered. He swears by the heavens that he has never done anything shameful in his life, yet they tell him he hasn't paid taxes on several acres of land. Does that even make sense? The listeners show clear sympathy as he tells his story, and Endami even covers his mouth with his hand, holding back his emotions. Sun Jungju says that if he had that rare item, he could directly approach official Po Chungsa and clear up the misunderstanding, so he begs them for help. Soho wonders if, in his past life, Lady Chu might have been the reason why so many landowners, including Mr. Sun, were ruined by tax evasion and even drove themselves to despair. Seeing the downcast guest, the young man thinks to himself that Sun Jungju has long been acquainted with their Silver Sea Trading Guild and is highly respected among the common folk. Soho believes that if they help him now, he will repay their kindness many times over. However, he realizes that getting involved with Lady Chu right now is too risky. The head of the trade guild approaches the guest and places a hand on his shoulder. The guy silently asks himself, what on earth am I thinking about? Why did their trade guild meet such an inglorious end? What did he decide to do when he went back in time? He must never forget this. He stands up from this chair and speaks to his father, but the bandage makes his words hard to understand. The chief inspector unties him, and Sun Jungju wonders, isn't the guy supposed to be a slave? Soho tells his father and their guest, who are watching him closely, that he has something to say. He says he'll try to get his hands on this rare treasure. The real name of the item Sun Jungju mentioned is a doll that dances on its own. In her past life, Soho's master came from the village of Golden Immortality in Jiangxi province, and Soho wants to investigate, hoping he might be able to find him. He believes the key is to avoid direct conflict with Lady Chu. The guy knows the emperor will soon issue a decree that will put an end to the noble lady's game. When that happens, Lady Chu's crimes will finally come to an end. She'll be executed, and as long as he stays away, everything will be fine. The bodyguard calls out to the lost-in-thought guy and asks, what does all this mean? Out of the blue? She says that whenever he plans to go somewhere, he should just tell her where and when. That's all she asks. Until yesterday he stayed silent, and now suddenly he's heading to Jiangxi province? Meanwhile, the carriage, escorted by warriors, carries them toward their destination, and the girl thinks the snowy roads are really dangerous. Soho raises his hands in a calming gesture, trying to soothe her, and says he thinks it's time for him to take on trading expeditions, as this task is very important for their trading guild. He says that his father and the others have already given their approval. Showing the dagger, he adds that even his older brothers gave him gifts and wished him well, and since Ye Yunam talks about danger, he'll keep this knife ready. The girl asks, why is he smirking like that? Sitting in the corner of the carriage, Palgak tells her this is the young master's first official expedition, reflecting on how much the young lord he's serving has grown, and admits he's both nervous and excited at the same time. The young man sitting next to the girl chuckles and says, that's right, then asks the bodyguard not to worry. Warrior Lim Genbin of the Money Pavilion believes the young man is much more mature and capable than he appears. He says he'll also help the young master so the mission goes smoothly and with honor, and Soho is glad to hear that. The young man adds that even the chief inspector said this young master needs to be brought back as soon as possible. The bodyguard thinks Yusoak gave good advice. Lim Genbin says, either way, this expedition is accompanied by Chief Guard Kwak from the Prosperity Agency and Captain Chong Chun from the Silver Wind Squad. So even if something happens, there's no need to worry. Then the warrior adds, unless they run into bandits or something like that. A shout rings out from outside, and Soho wonders, did he just jinx it? A young man steps out of the stopped carriage and asks, did something happen? He looks around. Soho sees a tall, sturdy man with a cross-shaped scar on his cheek, standing before the leaders escorting the carriage. Smiling, the man says they haven't seen each other in a long time. Chongchun from the Silver Wind Squad asks if everything is all right, while Guak Menhen, head of the Prosperity Security Agency and Soho's teacher, stands beside him. The stranger says that, judging by everything, they seem to be heading to Jiangxi province. Chongchun replies, that's right. They're transporting goods that need to stay dry, but all this snow is slowing them down and everyone is pretty worn out. The man replies that this is good news for them, as the leader of their fortress has sent an invitation to stop by for a warm cup of tea and some rest. A guy standing nearby watches what's happening and listens in on the conversation. Soho thinks the Green Forest bandits are in this area. That man must be nearby. In the room, 11 people sit around a long wooden table, including Soho and his companions. while the man at the head of the table warmly welcomes them all. He introduces himself as Zhang Desu, the head of the fortress on Mount Wutong, known as Wolf Fang or the Phantom Sword, with one eye hidden beneath a white bandage. Chong Chun introduces himself as the captain of the Silver Wind Squad from the Silver Sea Trading Guild. Guak Menhen follows his lead, introducing himself by name and his position as head of the Prosperity Agency. Zhang Desu says he was worried they might get frostbite in the bad weather, so he invited them to the fortress and thanks them for coming despite the sudden invitation. Chong Chung replies that they should be the ones thanking him, as they were in desperate need of a break and everything turned out perfectly. The man believes that, just like before, he's a good person and totally unsuited to be the head of the bandits. Zhang Desu says he's happy about it and suggests eating before the food and tea get cold. Palgak whispers into the bodyguard's ear, "Aren't they right now in the very heart of the bandits' lair? So why is everyone so calm?" Soho, hearing his question, replies that not all bandits or pirates attack trading groups or security agencies. In his time, villains who started fights without a plan were quickly crushed, but generally, if you stick to the approved paths, you can travel without any trouble. Palgak is impressed by his answer. The young master is a true expert. The bodyguard looks at Soho with surprise. She asks why he said "in his time," as if he has some kind of experience, when this is actually his first trip. The guy just calmly enjoys his tea. Setting down his cup and turning to the girl, he says, this is what his brother called very important advice. But anyway, this delicious food will get cold soon, so it's best to start eating. Taking a sip from his cup, the guy thinks the drink is really good. He thinks drinking that in winter is quite costly. Do they really have enough money for it? Soho listens in on the conversation. Zhang Desu thinks that they don't look like typical travelers. The guy says, "Where are his manners? He totally forgot to introduce himself." Rising and bowing, he introduces himself as N. Soho and says he works at the Silver Sea Money Pavilion. The fortress leader thoughtfully says, "In," then asks, "What kind of relationship does the guy have with the guild leader?" Soho replies that it is his father. Zhang Desu laughs. No wonder he has such a clear look in his eyes. He didn't realize they had such important guests and invites the young man to sit down quickly and enjoy the meal. Soho sits down on the bench. He scans everyone seated around the table. He notices that the man sitting across from him has only a modest meal on his plate, even though there are bowls of fried chicken on the table. He carefully examines the man's clothing. The guy wonders, I wonder, compared to the guest's food, the robber's meals are quite meager. Picking up the sticks, Soho reflects on what he saw, doubting that the chief is the kind of person to neglect his family for guests, and wondering how a fortress this size could be short on resources. He thinks it all looks kind of strange. Picking food from the plate with chopsticks, Soho keeps thinking. In tough times, they invite guests and treat them generously, often not even finishing their own meals. He realizes they want to charge more for the ride without being aggressive, yet they don't want to show any weakness, so he puts the sticks on the table. Soho falls into thought. This person probably doesn't know what's hidden beneath the mountain yet. If we play this right. A young man asks the fortress leader if they've had any trouble lately. The people present look at him with surprise. Zhang Desu quietly says, "Young Master Yen." Then, glaring fiercely at the young man, he said firmly, though he believed the young man was mistaken out of ignorance, he made it clear that his words had just been extremely offensive to their stronghold. Smiling, Soho apologizes if his careless words offended the host, but he believes there's no need for such a harsh reaction. The fortress guard is surprised and asks, "What is this guy talking about?" Soho replies that he doesn't think the fortress should cling to passers-by or offer them lavish treatment unsuited to the tough situation just to demand higher tolls than usual. The bodyguard tears her hair out, and Palgak closes his eyes in horror. Chong Chun wonders, how did the young master find out about this? Soho scans the dishes on the table and finishes speaking with the words, while everyone around pretends to be eating their fill. The fortress commander says the guy means they're offering food to charge higher fees while pretending to eat plenty themselves. Did he understand the guest correctly? Soho asks, isn't he right? A man's fist slams down onto the table with a loud crash. Zhang Desu jumps up from his seat. His people watch him warily. An evil aura radiates from the fortress chief, his eye blazing with crimson fire as the atmosphere in the room grows heavy. Yunam thinks the guy has completely lost it, and wonders what they should do now. Palgak, horrified, covers his mouth with his hands and says goodbye to everyone, saying they'll meet again in the next life. Zhang Desu starts laughing. The people present watch him warily, unsure of what to expect. The man keeps laughing, and a faint smile appears on Soho's lips. The fortress captain apologizes for the poor performance. Glancing over the exhausted faces of his subordinates, the man admits that the young man is absolutely right. His hand clenches into a fist as he says this winter has dumped more snow than ever before, making this year definitely tough for the fortress. But since he brought it up despite the risk of being misunderstood, he must have a plan. He watches Soho sitting in front of him with a patient, waiting gaze. The guy thinks the man is surprisingly generous for a gang leader, and even in his past life, he never saw him as someone who would spend his whole life in crime. Soho replies, "Of course," and Jang Da-soo looks at him with hope. The guy says it's a simple and effective method. The fortress leader remarks that the guy is full of confidence, and Soho thinks it's time to shake things up a bit. He says, before we continue, he wants to ask something. Does that sword behind the man belong to him? It seems like he cares about it a lot. Looking at his weapon with pride, Jang Da-soo says, "Of course. For a martial arts master, the sword is an extension of the body and caring for it is fundamental." The fortress commander is curious. How does this relate to the method the guy mentioned? Soho wonders, is Mount Utun any less important than this sword? Jang Da-soo doesn't understand what he's trying to say. This mountain is all he has. How could a guy say something like that? Soho asks, "Then why don't they take care of her?" The bodyguard is ready to kill him, shouting, "When will he finally stop?" The fortress commander wants to know what he means when he says he doesn't care about the mountain. Pointing outside the window, the guy says just one word, "Snow." Then he explains that because of the snow, fewer people are coming and going. Isn't that why they're collecting less toll than usual? The bandits listen to him carefully. Soho says they barely managed to get this far, which means smaller groups won't even try. He believes that if the bandits clear the snow and open the path, it will benefit the people by saving them from going around the mountain, allowing the bandits to collect more tolls, so everyone wins, and they can even raise the toll fees justified by the snow clearing, which people will understand. The fortress captain is confused. He hadn't really looked at it from this angle before. His men are chatting animatedly. They never even considered clearing the snow. One of them says, "Looks like the educated scoundrel is clever." And the other jumps up, pounding his fist on the table, shouting, "He just called the young master a scoundrel!" Jang Da-soo watches their bickering for a while as the bandit keeps going. "Why didn't their leader think of that before?" they retort. "How dare he say that? He's about to get it now." A man speaks to Soho. He feels awkward admitting it, but he never even considered such a possibility. He's ashamed for acting so boldly before he really understood him. He feels indebted to the guy and wonders if there's anything he wants in return. Soho thinks this is it! He asks the fortress chief if they can speak privately. With a wild hope in his eyes, he says there's something that could really help both them and him, and that he has a very intriguing story to tell. Standing on the cliff beside Jang Da-soo, Soho looks out over the fortress below and says, "What a magnificent view." The man replies, "It's their pride and joy." He says he started the camp here because he fell in love with the landscape, especially in winter when the snow covers everything in white, just like now. It's truly breathtaking. The fortress leader continues. Since the guy asked for a private talk, he figured it must be important. How about sharing it now? A guy wonders, how much does he really know about spiritual plants? He replies, "Not that much, to be honest." But where is he leading with this? Soho believes this happened 5 years before his death, when rumors began spreading about spiritual herbs growing on Mount Utun. And soon, the Murim alliance swept through Jang Fortress. In a short time, they took over the entire cultivation of spiritual herbs on the mountain. However, at this moment, the alliance has no idea they even exist. The guy speaks to the fortress leader. He tells him that here on Mount Utun, precious spiritual herbs grow everywhere. Soho adds that he can confirm this by looking at the bluish flower near his right foot. He says they call him the Snow Soul Flower, a great remedy for healing the organs. On the other hand, there's the White Tiger Spirit Flower that drives negative energy out of the body, and plants like snow ginseng that help the body absorb medicine more effectively. Soho explains that countless spiritual plants bloom on this mountain. The fortress commander asks, how does he know this information? The guy replies that a merchant selling various goods needs basic knowledge of herbs and an understanding of the area. Doesn't his companion agree? Jang Da-soo says that even for a trader, it's rare to identify spiritual herbs at a glance. Soho replies that the details are a trade secret and suggests just imagining he's not an ordinary merchant, adding that he can't exactly claim to know the future. The fortress captain believes he's not a coward and asks, so what exactly is his request? The guy says he wants to buy the plants exclusively and keep the deal a secret. The fortress commander wonders, could a deal be made? But why keep it a secret? The guy explains the prospects, warning that if others find out, it will cause trouble for both of them, as they could face rival trading guilds. Soho explains that they will have to guard these lands from thieves later, and the man agrees, saying that's true, as these herbs are quite unusual, and any outside interference could cause problems. He angrily adds, like those thieves who hide behind a mask of righteousness while committing all sorts of evil deeds. Soho looks at his companion in surprise. Could he really be talking about the Murim alliance? Placing his hand on his chest, Soho promises that if they strike a deal, they won't just buy herbs at a fair price, but also provide documents to help them distinguish spiritual herbs from ordinary plants. Extending his hand to Jang Da-soo, the young man asks if he will accept their offer. They shake hands, sealing the agreement. The fortress leader agrees. Deal's set. He'll be trading with the Silver Sea Guild. Soho thanks him and asks if they might come back and sign the contract, to which the man smiles and says the guy is careful to the very end. Soho replies that a contract is the foundation of a good deal, isn't it? They return to the fortress where the young man's companions are waiting. Soho walks through the gates and is genuinely surprised. He holds up his hand, palm facing forward, and shouts, "Wait!" Joyful Palgak wraps him in a warm bear hug, happy to have the young master back. Soho asks his companions gathered around him what all the fuss is about, and Palgak explains that since he was gone for so long they thought something had happened. A voice sounds near the guy's ear. Luckily, everything turned out fine. Next to him stands Chong Chun, captain of the Silver Wind Squad, who says that even though it was the guy's request, letting him go alone without any escort was very worrying. Soho insists he's fine. If something were wrong, he wouldn't have asked for a private meeting. Everyone's making a bigger deal out of this than necessary. Zhang Desu enters the gates and is greeted by his people. He says that young Master Yen is stronger than they all realize, with skills that are top-notch even among those present. Captain Silverwind says, "Excuse me?" But the fortress leader steps forward. Zhang Desu demands everyone's attention. The man says that starting today, they welcome in Soho from the Silver Sea Trading Guild as an honored guest and will treat him with respect. He insists that the guy and his companions be treated with exceptional hospitality, while Soho looks somewhat confused. The fortress lord says he doesn't want to be seen as shameless for charging a toll to the man who saved his life, and he wants everyone to remember that. Soho reaches out his hand and the bodyguard places a pouch of money into it. When she looks surprised, he replies that he can't just walk away after what he's been given. He hands the money to the fortress chief, saying that if he's uncomfortable accepting it, he can consider it not a fee, but an advance payment for the deal they made today. Zhang Desu smirks. He really does need to win everywhere, doesn't he? Fine. He'll gladly accept their challenge. Soho hands the pouch to the man. The guy turns to his companions and says, "Well, since they're in a hurry, it's time for us to hit the road." Zhang Desu believes that the youngest son of the Silver Sea Guild leader, despite his young age, is brave and smart. He reminded the fortress chief of an old friend. A man drifts into memories, standing frozen as he watches the building burn. A warrior shakes him by the shoulder, urging him to come to his senses, telling Zhang Desu not to even think about revenge and just follow him to safety. Taking his sword, the warrior says that from now on he'll have to hide his fighting skills from them, which means he'll need to change his weapon too. Looking him in the eyes, the warrior says firmly, he needs to survive. A very young Zhang Desu with a fresh scar crossing his eye looks at him in confusion, and the other adds that no matter what happens, the young master must survive. Mature Zhang Desu mentally addresses that warrior. Now that he's met a young man just as brave as himself, he can't help but recall memories of the past. The fortress commander watches the departing guests go. He lifts his face to the sun, a faint smile touching his lips, and continues his inner dialogue. Though he was told not to dream of a place, how can he live with the shame of abandoning his family? The man realizes he can't change anything, but he's curious to see how far this young man, who reminds him so much of his own savior, will go. Soho, resting his head on his hand, gazes out the carriage window, admiring the beauty of nature. Soho looks around, finding himself in a strange emptiness, completely unsure of where he is. He looks back cautiously. At his feet lie the shattered pieces of a doll that could dance. He's puzzled. Why is she here? Then a sound breaks the silence, maybe a sigh or a moan. The guy realizes that someone else is here too. He sees the bodies lying there, with a small, hunched figure grieving beside them, calling out for mother and father, and he wonders, is that a child? Soho approaches him, asking if he's okay. Suddenly, a child's bloodied hand grabs the hem of his coat. The child reaches out to him, begging to be saved this time. Soho wakes up in bed as someone calls out to him, addressing him as the young master. Turning his head, he sees Palgak kneeling by his bed, asking if he's all right. Footsteps sound behind Palgak. Yunam enters the room and asks, "Did you have a nightmare?" Sitting up in bed, the guy reassures them. It's okay, just a bad dream. He believes he urgently needs to find this child, and it's terrifying to imagine what might happen if he doesn't make it in time. The bodyguard says he's been pushing himself hard lately, all to find that master. Soho smiles and replies, "Probably." As he sets his feet on the floor, he says, "If it works out, they'll come out way ahead." The guy continues, "So today they'll try again." E&M watches him expectantly. Soho adds that they need to find the doll's creator. It was already the third day since he arrived in the village of Golden Immortality, and Soho, accompanied by his servant and bodyguard, was walking through the market past stalls filled with fruits and vegetables. Watching Palgak buy sweets, baked apples on sticks, the guy silently thanks the teacher and captain for letting him move around freely. Soho sighs, he still hasn't found a master. According to confirmed information, the master lived here in the village of Golden Immortality, and there was even a clue that he lived in the house with a Paulownia tree. so Soho believes it won't be hard to find the house based on these details. He notices that paulownia trees are growing near almost every house. While Palgak enjoys the sweets, the bodyguard watches the guy suspiciously, wondering what he's up to this time. Soho thinks it's important to take a good look around. He feels like someone is watching them. He can feel someone's eyes on him again. As soon as word got out that he arrived in the village of Golden Immortality, someone has been constantly following him. Soho understands. They're afraid the Silver Sea might disrupt their trade routes. The bodyguard says it seems they're being watched again, and he agrees. It looks that way. The guy is thinking it over. It makes sense, but it still worries him. He's already focused on finding any clue that could lead to the doll's creator. His eyes fall on Palgak. He thinks they should deal with the spies first, while Soho tells the servant that this market seems full of all sorts of interesting things. Palgak vigorously turns his head in different directions and confirms that's right. Even though they see them every day, there's always something new to discover. It's simply amazing. Soho suggests, maybe today they'll take a walk that way. The servant agrees. Sounds great. But E&M frowns, sensing something's off. A young man and his servant rush off, while a girl calls after them, telling them not to hurry because she sees no reason to, and they invite her to run with them. All three sit on the curb. Palgak finishes his treat while Soho and Ye-Unam catch their breath after racing through the market to shake off their pursuers. The girl says, "It looks like they managed to get away." Palgak couldn't hide his surprise. Were they really being chased like that? Did the young master know too? Soho replied, "Why do you think they took off so fast?" Of course he knew. A shout rings out, "Thief!" And the young man immediately turns toward the noise. They see a man chasing another who's holding a wallet, shouting and swearing that his family will starve without it. A chased man rushes past Soho and his companions. The guy pauses for a split second, lost in thought. Then he snatches the apple from the stick Palgak is holding, saying he'll borrow it for a second. He channels his inner energy into it. The divine art of the great Yin Ice Sea is a technique that lets you gather energy in the most efficient way. Soho recalls how his teacher, showing him his sword, explained that with enough experience, he would be able to infuse even objects with yin energy. A cold, icy aura radiates from the man's sword. Soho holds an apple charged with yin energy in his hand. He thinks it's just a little, but it will be enough. A guy forcefully throws an apple in the direction the thief is running. It rolls under the man's feet. He steps on it and falls to the ground. The pursuer is rapidly closing in on him. A man looks at an apple lying on the ground and asks, "Who left this here?" Soho leans over him, demanding he return the wallet, while the girl stands nearby with her arms crossed. Palgak thinks the thief is really bad. The servant literally snatches the stolen wallet from the hands of the man already sitting on the ground. The guy laughs. It's clear he's easy to get along with, while a breathless man who is chasing a thief stands behind him. Soho hands him his property, and the man thanks the young man. Pointing to the thief held by Palgak, Soho says they will take him to the guards, and the man can go free. But he doesn't hurry to leave. Instead, he asks if they might stop by his place for some tea, saying he'd feel terrible letting his rescuer go without a proper thank you. Soho says he didn't do anything special, and there's no need to call him a hero. Noticing the man's grateful gaze, the young man says they'll probably stop by for a cup of tea after all. He leads them to a small house with a tree growing nearby, invites them inside, saying they live simply but are always happy to have guests. And Soho objects, saying the place feels very cozy and charming. A girl and a slightly older boy run out of the house, happily greeting their father. The children hug the man tightly, and as he holds them close, he asks if they had a good time. Looking back, he tells his guests that these are his children, then asks his son and daughter to come over and greet his companions. They greet Soho, who is stunned. Wait, what just happened? This is the house with the paulownia tree, and the boy he saw in his dream. Soho, sitting at the table, wonders if this child could really be the doll maker he's been searching for, and the bodyguard suggests just asking the boy if he knows how to make dolls. The guy agrees. Well, it seems there's nothing better than being straightforward, and the boy reminds him a lot of the child he saw in his dream. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of a door opening. The homeowner appears at the door holding a tray, saying they've probably been waiting for him. Setting down the tray with cups of tea, the man apologizes for not having anything better to offer. Soho, taking the cup, says he has no reason to apologize, finds the tea rich and full-bodied, quite impressive, and then thanks the man for the treat. The person setting the tray down on the table says he never actually introduced himself. Bowing respectfully, he says he lives here in the village of Golden Immortality and makes pottery. His name is Gunduyi, and he thanks the guest once again for their help. Soho approaches him and says anyone in his shoes would do the same, warning that if he keeps going, he'll only feel more awkward. He asks the homeowner what his children's names are. He replies that the eldest son is named Gunmil and the daughter is Gunray. The guy thinks it's his turn to introduce himself. He says his name is En Soho from the Chongyang district in Hubei province, and then he thanks the man for the warm welcome. Gong Dui, noticing the guest's rich attire, remarks that he seems like an important person, but shows interest in his humble situation, which makes him feel awkward. Soho objects, that's not true at all. Compared to him, a simple merchant, Gong Dui, a father raising 2 children, deserves much more admiration. While they talk, Palgak plays in the yard with the kids. Soho tells the man, surprised by his words, that he's not very experienced in this, but he's heard that raising children is a lot like running a country. They stand by the open door, looking out into the yard. The man admits it's a tough challenge and often wishes he could give them more. The guy says it might sound confident, but seeing the kids bright and cheerful, he'd say the man has already done a lot. Soho's attention is caught by a toy cart with spinning wheels. He asks the kids, "Did you make this?" The girl replies, "My brother made this," and adds that he's made a bunch of other things too. The guy's eyes light up with excitement. It's the legendary Tachanka machine gun cart. He picks up the toy and studies it closely. It's a bit rougher than those he saw in his past life, but it's definitely a cart that starts moving on its own when the gears are turned and it's placed on the ground. Soho recalls that these toys were popular among wealthy kids. He can hardly believe that a child could have done something like this. He realizes that in this case, the boy could have made a dancing doll too. The guy says it's really impressive and asks if Mill has happened to make anything like this before. The sister beats her embarrassed brother to it and shouts, "Of course I made it!" She immediately runs away quickly. Then he comes back holding a wooden doll in his hands. Looking at her, Soho realizes this is exactly what he's been searching for. Compared to the intricate doll he remembers, this one is quite rough. But since the boy is just starting out, this level of work is to be expected. A girl places a toy on the table where Soho and her father are sitting. She asks in surprise why the doll isn't moving, and her brother, picking it up, explains that it's probably because of the durability of the parts inside the doll. The boy explains that before, when he turned this gear, the fish bubble inside created pressure, making the doll move on its own. He sadly adds that it was made from discarded market materials, which is probably why it broke so quickly. The guy asks if he could make this doll again, provided he had the right materials. The boy's face instantly lights up, filled with hope and anticipation. Gong Dui says his son is really good at making things like this. He pats the boy on the head, explaining that while he's talented, his skills don't make money yet. Goon Mil is just entertaining the neighborhood kids and his little sister for now. Soho asks the homeowner again, aren't they bringing any money? He says his son's talent is a gift from heaven, and his skills can definitely bring great wealth. Gong Dui asks skeptically what kind of wealth the guest means, and Soho explains that the items his son creates are rare and unique, and if they are finished and put up for sale, they would fetch a high price. The man disagrees, believing that it's the merchants who make the money, not the craftsmen who create the goods. He says that craftsmen like him, without power or connections, are just being used. As the saying goes, the bear takes the risk, while the trader sells the honey. Soho is worried. The man's outlook is more pessimistic than he expected, and if things keep going this way, Master Gong and his entire family could end up in slavery. His hand clenches into a fist without thinking. The young man realizes that to change their tragic fate, he must act differently, and he makes up his mind. Soho looks up at the worried homeowner, speaking to him with concern. The guy asks what share he gets from selling his ceramics, and the other replies he's not sure, but probably less than 10%. Soho says that if he lets him sign a contract with his son, he'll give him 40% of the profits, provided he joins the Silver Sea Trade Guild workshop. Gong Dui is surprised. 40%? Why is he offering his child so much? He decides he needs time to think it over. Soho's face darkens. Just as he expected, the man can't make quick decisions. Soho says it's serious, so let him think it over carefully. As he gets up from the table, he thinks there's no need to rush and decides to leave the host alone with his thoughts for now, thanking him for the tea. Leaving the house, Soho says he plans to return to Hubei the day after tomorrow or the next day, and until then, he will stay at the guest house. He tells the man to come to him once he has made his decision. Gong Dui nods his head and replies, "All right." His son stands beside him, while the girl waves goodbye. After saying goodbye, Soho and his companions leave the courtyard. The bodyguard asks, "Is this boy the doll maker he's been looking for?" Looking at the guy, she wonders why he seems so gloomy. Soho feels that even though he wants to help this family, he doesn't have a good reason to do so. He clenches his teeth tighter, telling himself that nothing has happened yet. The Nut Oak Trading Guild. 2 men sit at a table, and one tells the other that he heard they couldn't collect the monthly tribute from Master Gun. He bows respectfully and apologizes, quoting a proverb that says, "Even if you're unlucky, you can break your nose falling on your back." He explains that the person he assigned the task to ended up getting caught while escorting the 3rd young master from the Silver Sea Trading Guild. The man says he has already taken extra steps, so there shouldn't be any problems. The guild leader asks if he has found out why this pup from the Silver Sea came here. Without looking up, the man replies that they've been watching him for days, but he's just been wandering around the village and market all that time. The interviewer assumes the guy wants to gain experience in fieldwork, but he heard that he visited Master Gun today. The man explains that the craftsman insisted on offering him tea, saying he couldn't let his benefactor leave empty-handed, but it seems to be just a coincidence, so there's nothing to worry about. He adds that soon they'll force him to sign a slave contract. The guild leader believes the master is trying to switch to another trade guild and betray them, even after they've supported him all this time. He says to the man bowing before him, "This is why you can't trust commoners. If the master keeps resisting, bring him here." A dark fire lights up in his eyes as he vows they'll teach the master a painful lesson to remind him of his place. Night has fallen. Gundui's wife has put the children to bed. The man sits at the table with a burning candle, lost in thought. The woman asks, "Why are you sighing so heavily?" She sits down next to him, and he says he can't stop thinking about the person who came to see them today. The woman asks for clarification. Does he mean the guy who, as he said, helped him get his wallet back? Gongdui confirms that yes, this gentleman recognized their son's talent and offered him a contract promising 40% of the earnings, while the adults talk and the children sleep peacefully in their bed. A man tells his wife that the more he thinks about someone casually offering such a large sum, the more suspicious their intentions seem, as he's been deceived so many times before, and he feels miserable for doubting even the person who helped him. A woman asks her husband if he really takes that scammer's word seriously or not. The wife says that until now, the Walnut Oak Guild has been the reason they had food on the table, right? Gunduyi asks, "What is she even talking about? Has she forgotten how they treated him all this time?" He reminds her that they already agreed they'd need a new job once their guild contract ended, but she objects, saying yes, they decided that before. But now everything's changed, as she searches for something behind her clothing. The man is stunned by what his wife has given him. Holding the shiny object in his hands, he asks, "Is this a gold bar?" But wonders where she got it. The woman explains that she recently ran into Juan Garin from the Nut Oak Trading Guild at the market. She says he gave her gold and told her she could repay the debt once their kids grow up, so for now, they'll be set just by selling the bar. Pretty great, right? The wife tells Gunduyi that the gentleman who suddenly appeared out of nowhere and offered 40% to commoners like them seems very suspicious compared to their benefactors. She asks, "Isn't this a trick?" Looking at her sleeping son, the woman says they can't trust Milia with someone like him. Gunduyi, placing a gold ingot on the table before him, tries to object. Suddenly, he hears someone asking if he's home, and he's surprised. Who could be visiting so late? He carefully opens the door and the unexpected visitor speaks up. Looks like he's still awake. Gunduyi sees Huang Garin with his warriors and asks what brought him here and why the guards are present, to which Huang replies he never expected Gun to think that way about him. Behind the guards stands a man whose face is hidden by a thick mop of hair. Juan Garin keeps insisting, no matter how tempting the money, how could he ever dare to touch the trading guild's property? Gong Duyi is starting to see where this is headed. He never expected the Walnut Oak Guild to treat him this way. Juan Garin says, "Since they're still awake, it looks like they plan to escape tonight." The woman standing by the open door trembles with fear and asks, "What escape? What are you talking about?" A man points to a gold bar on the table behind her and says it belongs to the Nut Oak Trading Guild. They're still going to deny it, even with such clear evidence? The noise wakes Mill. A woman apologizes, saying she must have misunderstood. But didn't he give her the ingot today and tell her to use it? Yet he cuts her off with a shout. "What?" Juan Garin asks. "Does she have any written proof? A contract showing they borrowed money from the guild?" The woman is confused. Written proof? She's never heard of such a thing before. What is that? Her interlocutor cuts her off. Enough, this is a waste of time, and orders the guards to take these thieves away immediately. Warriors drag the couple out of the house as the woman calls for her children. Gunduyi asks Juan Garin what is going on. Mile calls out to his parents and runs after them, but Juan Garin's hand blocks his way. The man says they'll just sign the contract and there's no need to follow them. He tells him to stay here and behave well. They'll be back soon. Suddenly, a girl appears at his feet. She bites Juan Garin on the leg. Without hesitation, he strikes her hard, sending her crashing to the back of the room. A girl is thrown back, knocking over small objects as she hits the wall of the house, and her brother rushes to her side. An angry man says, "Like parents, like children. They're all ignorant fools, no different from animals. And since they're animals..." He is stopped by the appearance of a man in the doorway, who had previously hidden his face with his hair, and he asks in surprise, "Byung, what are you up to?" He silently walks deeper into the room, sticking his knife into the wooden table. He calls out to Millie, who is sitting on the floor holding his unconscious sister. Then he hands the knife to the boy, telling him to take it. He explains that nothing in this world will go his way until he sheds blood. So if he's a man, let him attack as if he's ready to die. With a trembling hand, Mill reaches for the weapon offered to him. Suddenly, he bolts up, grabs his sister onto his back, and dashes toward the door, shouting. Juan Garin asks if he's really just going to let the boy go, and the other replies that kids weren't part of the deal. He tells the confused man that if he wants him to do it. Smiling, he goes on to say that he needs to be paid extra. As he heads for the exit, he asks why he's wasting time at this rundown village dump and answers himself. Because they pay for it, that's why. But lately it's been nothing but disappointment. Walking down the street, he swings his sword, smashing the stone blocks in his path. Byung sighs. Could there really be no one strong enough here to entertain him? A shout rings out in the guest house. Soho, what? Did Mill come by? Hurrying to get dressed, the guy asks, at this hour? Alone without your parents? Where are you now? A boy appears before him, with a bodyguard and Palgak holding a girl standing behind him, and Mill shyly greets Soho, looking at the girl lying in the servant's arms with her eyes closed. The young man asks, what happened? He crouches down in front of the boy, who looks hurt, and asks again, what happened? Mile is speechless, tears streaming down his cheeks. Then he finally talks about what happened that night. Soho thinks it's his fault. No matter the reason, he should have assigned security to them. The girl is eagerly devouring the meat. Chong Chun, offering a spoonful of porridge to the child, can't hide her surprise at how eagerly the little one devours the chicken drumstick. Soho, sitting across the table from Palgak, says the girl seems to be feeling better, and the servant thinks she's a very resilient child. Yeon Am approaches them, holding the boy's hand, and explains that Captain Chong Chun personally called the doctor, who treated her first. The girl adds that fortunately everyone only got minor scrapes and she's okay. Mill just got back and he's fine too. She says the boy wants to tell Soho something. Feeling a bit shy, he asks the guy if, thanks to his talent, he'll be able to make a lot of money, right? Nervously, he wrings the edges of his clothes in his hands. Then, trying not to cry, he adds, if that's the case, let him save his parents. He begs him earnestly, promising to work hard and pay whatever it takes. Soho apologizes and says it's impossible. Mill looks at him with wide eyes, clearly showing confusion. Soho explains that the boy deserves to be paid for his work, and asks if he thinks the boy is some useless leech who expects him to work for free. Placing his hand on Melia's shoulder, he promises to draw up a fair contract and share the promised profits. But to do that, he needs his parents' consent. So of course, they must be brought here. The boy's face brightens, hope shining in his eyes. Soho tells the boy to stay here and look after his sister, promising he'll be back soon with his parents. He bows respectfully and thanks the captain for taking care of the children. Chong Chun replies that it's no problem. Knowing their situation, he can't just ignore it, as it's natural for a member of the Silver Sea Trading Guild. But he can't spare many people for escorts since today is the meeting with the Ocean Trading Guild, which was the main goal of their mission. Soho replies that everything is fine. They're not planning to fight, just have a simple chat with another trade guild, nothing more. The captain bows and says he'll assign 3 warriors from the Silver Wind Squad to accompany him just in case, urging the young man to be careful, and Soho thanks him for his concern. The guy heads towards the exit, saying it's time to go, with the bodyguard and Palgak following him. Standing in his way is Guokman, the head of the security agency Prosperity. He hands the sword to the young man, saying he hopes he won't need it, but if he does, he should use it. The young man is confused. His teacher hasn't taught him any sword techniques yet, but he takes the blade and thanks Guokman. As Soho was about to continue on his way, his teacher's voice echoed in his mind, warning him to beware of the martial arts master from the Nut Oak Guild, known as Byung. Soho was surprised. The whisper technique? The teacher's voice keeps reminding us, never let your guard down and moor him. Guokman adds that when he returns, they'll continue training at night, so Soho, still struggling to recover, replies, all right. A guy's hand reaches for the door handle and he opens the door. He tells his companions it's time to move out and get to work. Soho leads the way, followed by his servant, bodyguard, and 3 warriors. 2 men sit at the table, Huang Garin and the guildmaster, while Gun Duyi, held by 2 warriors with his hands tied behind his back, stands before them. The guildmaster asks the master if he realizes the gravity of the situation, explaining that his wife stole a gold ingot worth 1,000 coins from the Nut Oak Trading Guild. A man shows the gold and explains that according to their rules, the master must pay 5 times the damage as compensation. But of course, he doesn't have that kind of money. The master shouts, "Wait! They've told them countless times they didn't steal anything." A frightened woman with bound hands, supported by a guard, stands near her husband while the guild leader says, "Stop being stubborn." He puts a sheet of paper on the table and says, "Let the master just sign the slave contract and we'll pretend it never happened." Gunduyi asks, "Isn't he afraid of divine punishment? Even animals behave more honorably than someone with a human face like him." Juan Garin jumps at him and punches him in the face, saying, Here, the master's word is law. He keeps beating the master, explaining that a future slave must never speak to his owner like that. And as long as the master is kind, it's best to obey him. Beaten, Gundui sinks to the floor, but the guards holding him keep him from falling. His wife tries to reach him, but she's held back just as firmly. The man sitting at the head of the table chuckles and reminds Huang Garin that they agreed, no violence, and suggests they settle this like civilized people, asking the master to imagine what would happen if he reported the theft to the authorities. He keeps saying that the master's wife and children will be sold to some harsh, unknown place. Wouldn't it be better to work for him instead? Gong Duyi asks, so all this happened because he was planning to join another trade guild at the end of the month? He demands an answer. Is it really all because of this? The guild leader replies that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Then he adds, if the master wants to make things harder, so be it. They'll just hand them over to the authorities, and when they're sold into slavery, they'll learn their lesson through suffering, as many can't survive such harsh conditions and end up taking their own lives. He says that judging by Gundui's stubbornness, his children might endure more than others, and the master asks him for forgiveness. The man sighs dramatically. Has he really gotten that old? His hearing isn't what it used to be. Huang Garin says, now let's see whose hearing is off. He yells at the master that he can't even apologize properly. Gong Dui pounds his forehead on the floor, shouting, forgive me! He insists he's truly sorry, and admits he behaved without knowing his place. He promises to sign a slave contract or anything else. He's just begging for the children's mercy, asking for their forgiveness. The man orders the warriors to release the master, and they obey. With a wave of his hand, he orders Huang Garin to bring the contract, saying, wouldn't it have been better to do this from the start? Standing over the kneeling Gun Duyi and handing him a piece of paper, he says, some only understand power. A sudden blow literally knocks him off his feet. A broken door knocks the man down and collapses on top of him in pieces. A voice rings out sharply. Some only understand once they're slammed against the wall. Some are like him. The last words directed at the frightened and confused Huang Garin. Soho, resting his sword on his shoulder, adds that he actually just wanted to talk. Kicking a splinter that had chipped off the door, he says, but now that they've broken the door and all, looks like they're about to start a little scuffle. He places his sword in front of him and asks, who goes first? Huang Garin, stunned by his behavior, is left speechless. Meanwhile, the guards help their master up and brush off his clothes. He asks his assistant who the boy is, and the assistant replies that he is the youngest son of the head of the Silver Sea Trading Guild. The man, now recovered, exclaims, so it was him. The Silver Sea pup who's been wandering around the Golden Immortality village these past few days. He realizes who's been watching him all along. Soho tells him she knows everything about him. There's no need to chase after him to find out. The man gets angry and yells for him to watch his language, asking what he could possibly know. The guy replies that he's a scumbag who tricks vulnerable people into signing slave contracts. Soho calls him a greed-driven beast who's lost his humanity, adding that the man is quite cowardly, scared just by the mention of the Silver Sea Trading Guild and sending people to watch their agents. The bodyguard says he even looks like a crook and believes potential business partners will refuse to work with him just by seeing his face. Because of people like him, traders get a bad reputation, and Palgak adds that his little beard makes him look even more like a swindler, which suits him perfectly. The man fills with rage, struggling to respond to the insults. Soho, ignoring him, asks the girl what would happen if a sly guy like him confessed his feelings, and she replies that he'd get hit with a bamboo stick right away. The angry homeowner shouts, grab him immediately! A warrior, drawing his blade, approaches the young man. The other guards should follow his example. 3 armed men rush toward a calm young man who waits for them without a hint of fear. Soho's face shows boredom. The bodyguard fends off the warrior's attack. Smiling, she says she hasn't stretched in a long time. She strikes one of the opponents, and immediately he strikes down the second guard with his blade. She easily deflects her opponent's attacks. One of the guards tried to sneak up from behind, but without turning around, the girl kicks him. As she delivers the final blow, Ye Unam declares, done! The warriors accompanying Soho exchange glances, clearly impressed by the girl. The guy says, now that they've cleaned up the trash, maybe we can finally talk. But the guild leader lunges at Huang Garin, shouting, what are you doing? Stop the guy right now! He replies, sir, you know he can't fight. A man shouts, where is he carrying Byong? He was hired for this! A mercenary appears in the doorway and asks if they're looking for him. The guild leader of Nut Oak shouts, yes, where has he even been? Is he going to earn his share? Byong mockingly asks, a share? Looking at the situation, it doesn't seem like the man can even pay a part. The leader, confused, asks, what did he say? The mercenary says they'll change the terms. If the boss pays 10 times the usual amount, he'll get him out of there immediately. The man curses but agrees to pay. Hearing that his terms were accepted, Byung draws his blade. Soho yells at the warriors to dodge, but they can't avoid getting hurt. Drops of blood scatter across the hall as one of the warriors crouches down, clutching his head. Byung's movements are so fast they're almost impossible to see. The mercenary's eyes glow with a sinister aura. Soho and Byung cross their swords. The guy asks, "How dare he?" Smiling, Byung says he can try buying it too. The guild leader is worried. Surely Byung won't lose to that rookie. Hwang Garin replies that despite his appearance, Byung is truly a top-tier martial artist. He's still young, so if he gets a lucky break, he could one day reach the peak of his path. His companion asks, "Top tier? Peak of his path? How strong is that exactly?" Hwang Garin explains that countless martial artists spend their lives training yet remain mediocre, but a top-tier fighter can easily lead a small sect. And when they reach the peak of their path, words become unnecessary. He asks the chief if he really thinks the young man stands a chance, and when the man happily agrees, he shouts to Byung to teach the arrogant pup the Murim code. Meanwhile, the fight between the mercenary and Soho continues. Clutching his sword, the young man says, "Buy me with money? We'll see about that." He doesn't think he needs it. If all the enemy's worth is money, he can handle it himself. The mercenary sneers, saying spoiled rich kids better keep quiet. With a warning that he might seriously regret it, he attacks Soho, who barely manages to dodge. Byung keeps attacking, but the guy skillfully blocks every strike. The mercenary is impressed by Soho's skill. The guy is having a tough time, but he's determined to push through. After exchanging blows, they back away, increasing the distance between them. Byung, smiling, admits he thought he was just dealing with a wild kid, but it seems this kid actually has something to show. Pulling something from his clothes, he says the guy needs to know. Surviving in Murim isn't easy. He throws a container at Soho. It explodes, splashing the guy right in the face. He realizes the enemy used fire wine, a drink with high alcohol content. His eyes burn and won't open, and he wonders what to do in this situation. Soho tells himself to think, there has to be a way. The guy can't see anything and feels extreme discomfort. That word seems to stir something deep in his memory. He recalls his teacher saying that the divine art of the great yin ice sea is a technique inspired by the icy breath of the winter sea, with a mysterious depth like the ocean. He explained that the more you understand her, the more uncomfortable you feel around people with dark or negative energy, like those from the demonic cult or the dark faction. Soho said, "Discomfort? That doesn't sound good." The teacher replied, "Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's a huge advantage. If someone is filled with a thirst for killing, they won't be able to hide it from your energy perception. At a certain level, he will even be able to sense their movements and positions, something Soho never managed to achieve in his past life." The teacher admitted that at his current level, the guy would probably just feel some discomfort. It's the stage right before the peak, when a person is still a top-notch expert, and he assured that once he reached this point, he would start reading his opponent's movements and positioning. He said that's why Soho shouldn't slack off in training. One day, when life hangs in the balance, this finely tuned sensitivity to energy will be a weapon sharper than any blade. Using the divine art of the great yin ice sea technique, the young man realizes he can feel its power, even if just a little, all thanks to his dedicated daily training. Sensing his opponent behind him, Soho blocks the strike and delivers an elbow to the solar plexus. Byung, caught completely off guard, lets out a choked scream. The mercenary shifts position and ends up facing the guy, who thinks his opponent is incredibly fast since he nearly missed. Doubling over in pain, Byung asks how the guy knew he would attack from behind, thinking that Soho's sword skills are still basic despite his strong inner energy. Rubbing his eyes, the guy replies, "Who knows? If he's so curious, he can pay. He should know information never comes for free." The mercenary is angry, yelling and insulting the guy. The bodyguard and servant try to save the warriors by pressing on their wounds, but Palgak says the bleeding won't stop and asks the girl what to do. She replies, "What do you think? He should press harder." But they can only help 2 warriors. The third starts coughing up blood, and E and Am realizes they don't have enough hands. Looking at the married couple, Gun thinks bitterly that they're panicking, while the master tries to calm his wife by holding her close. Her gaze shifts to the guildmaster and Hwang Garin, who is urging the lord to leave immediately. She yells fiercely, "Come here quickly and help stop the bleeding, right now!" Both men, startled by the stern shout, immediately rush to carry out the order. Meanwhile, Byung strikes Soho once again, but the guy just takes a small step back and dodges the hit. He trips his opponent, causing him to fall to the ground. Byung is trying to catch his breath. Soho thinks it's time to wrap things up, and the mercenary feels like his opponent is dodging every attack as if he can predict them. A smile spreads across his lips. It's been so long since anyone has managed to entertain him. He throws his sword aside. Soho is surprised. Why is he suddenly giving up? The mercenary explains it's actually the opposite. He used the sword because he doesn't want to dirty his sect's art with dirty work. Then he takes a fighting stance. With surprise, Soho listens as Byung acknowledges his strength. The mercenary speaks respectfully and declares that now they will truly fight. The guy sheathes his sword and says, "So that's why the supposed martial arts master handles the sword so poorly. Now everything makes sense." He throws the sword to his servant, who catches it midair. The bodyguard, uneasy, asks what he's planning. He solemnly responds to his opponent, stating his full name and guild, and says that since the opponent fights with fists and palms, he will also face him using the martial art he has mastered. Soho recalls that in his past life, martial arts were just a way to survive, and he believes that will never change. Calling his opponent a mentor, he asks to be taught something valuable. Byung is pleasantly surprised by the attention, saying he likes Soho and promises to show him a few tricks. A guy stands ready in a fighting stance, waiting for his opponent's move, thinking that everything is different now. In this life, more than anything else, he wants to become much stronger than he was in his past life, while a mercenary attacks Soho. The guy successfully blocks his strikes. Byung rushes in with the pursuing strike of the double viper. The guy is forced to retreat. He takes a step back. Soho sees that the mercenary's bold attitude has vanished without a trace. He realizes that the opponent's martial art is real. As the fight goes on, Byung realizes one thing for sure. He's definitely better than this youngster. But he just can't figure out, how does the guy block every single one of his attacks? The mercenary wonders why he can't even land a hit on him. Byung thinks the guy's eyesight isn't any better than his own, and he hasn't studied the art of his sect, so how is that possible? The mercenary takes a powerful punch to the face. He sees the sky above him with crows circling overhead. Byung, still a teenager, wonders, will he die? A man approaches him, completely exhausted and sitting against a stone wall, and says that a child shouldn't have a look like his. This man calls him a lost child. He reaches out his hand and says, if he doesn't want to die here, why not come with him? Byung sees the smiling face of this man. He's grown now. With a strong grip on the collar, he lifts a struggling man off the ground. Why is he doing this? The mercenary replies briefly, saying it's his employer's request. His target promises to pay more, and he asks, how much did they give you? Byung looks at him coldly and asks, how much can you offer? He gets slapped and hears the teacher's reminder that he told him not to use martial arts on the defenseless. The man tells him that if he's going to keep falling down, he better stay out of sight and never come back. Byung asks him to keep it down since he's just here to say goodbye. The interlocutor calls him ungrateful, but a bloody cough stops him from finishing his sentences. Byung coldly watches as the exhausted old man collapses to the floor, telling him, without much respect, calling him a monk, that he grew up on the streets and saw nothing else. So what's wrong with making a living through violence? The old man calls him a fool. The monk says his martial art has no meaning or soul because his fists are driven by greed, and one day he will remember those words. Night falls as a bowing looms over the man who promised him money, gripping him by the chest with one hand while threatening him with a knife in the other, saying the mercenary never realized how cruel the world could be, since he was always the one doing the beating, not the one being beaten, right? A crowd of men surrounds them. A man gripping a knife keeps speaking. Even traders from quiet back streets with no martial arts skills can band together to stand up to a scoundrel like this. Byung listens calmly to his words, who adds that he shouldn't be sad, stuck in hell. It's just karma. After a short while, the mercenary finds himself surrounded by countless dead bodies. He clenches his fist, ready to deliver the final blow. Byung hears his teacher's voice again, reminding him never to use martial arts against the defenseless. He spots the knife the merchant had threatened him with. He picks it up and looks it over, then hears a voice. It's impressive. He looks up to see the guildmaster, Nut Oak, standing before him, offering his hand and saying that the merchant had been a nuisance to him too. But now the problem is solved, and he invites Byung to work for him. Smiling, the mercenary asks, how much can he give me? He wants to live rich and powerful. From Byung's lips bursts out, as if he says it's like he's going to die in a place like this. But he's come to and is ready to fight again. The mercenary uses the snake technique, devouring the iron bird. His movements are so fast it's hard to keep up with them. He attacks the guy who takes a defensive stance. Soho is trying to block the strike, but the enemy resorts to deception. Byung celebrates. It worked! He's ready to deliver the final deadly blow. With a shout of die, Byung lunges at Soho. But the foot he pushes off the floor with gets covered in ice and sticks to it. Byung's hands reach out toward the guy. The tips of his fingers come just shy of touching the face of the motionless Soho. The mercenary's mind echoes his teacher's words once more. His fighting style lacks both meaning and soul, all because his fists are driven by greed. Soho clenches his hand into a fist, preparing to strike with all his inner energy. In Byung's mind, he hears the monk's voice. One day, he'll remember those words and realize the monk was right. Soho delivers a crushing blow to the enemy. The mercenary, recalling his teacher's grave, admits that in the end his fists were empty. Soho watches as the enemy, knocked back by the blow, falls to the ground. A stream of blood bursts from the mercenary's mouth. The guy shakes his hand that he hit with, standing slightly bent over, catching his breath. Soho lets out a tired sigh. Gathering his strength, he thanks Byung for the lesson. Master Gun says his family owes him and the Silver Sea Trading Guild a huge debt, and he doesn't even know how to thank them. Soho replies it's not necessary, as he was really doing it for himself. But the man doesn't understand what he means. Last night, they ended the dark chapter of the Nut Oak Trading Guild, whose leader at first denied any involvement in what happened. But the moment Soho showed the officer the gold bar that sparked the scandal, he immediately fell silent, as the bar turned out to be fake. In his past life, Soho, the guildmaster, was beheaded for making counterfeit money, so he knew the gold bar he used for blackmail was fake. Even Huang Garin, who was arrested along with the chief, thought making a fake ingot was going too far, so the incident was settled. Soho recalls how Byung simply vanished amid all the chaos. The guy tells the master he's just a simple trader, and by helping him, he also helped Soho himself, though he's definitely not the kind to stand by when he sees injustice. Gong Dui replies that he's not sure he can repay the favor, but he'll do everything he can, and Soho says he likes that attitude. He offers to give him his son, then quickly corrects himself, saying he wants to make a contract with him, and the other man recalls the offer the young master made to him the day before. Soho waits patiently for his reply. A boy sitting at a set table with his mother and sister hears someone calling his name. The guy waves at him and asks if he hasn't forgotten their deal. The boy looks at him with hope, and Soho smiles softly. Night. The mansion is brightly lit. A woman pours a drink from a small bottle into a cup held out to her. Taking a sip, the girl sitting in the bathtub asks, "So, Sun Jungju reached out to the Silver Sea Trade Guild?" She thinks it's really interesting. A wooden doll moves, and Jock Benchol, Yondami, and Go Ilpin, sitting at the table, watch in amazement. Soho watches the moving wooden figure with curiosity. Those present find it simply unbelievable. The head of the Silver Sea Trade Guild agrees with the general consensus. The chief inspector says it seems like a waste to just offer this to official Po Chongsu, believing they could put it on sale right now. But others argue that while the doll is certainly fascinating, it only dances by itself. So will it really sell well? Soho believes it will sell like crazy. The chief inspector turns to the head of external relations, saying his eye isn't trained, and that thing just screams wealth. Doesn't he sense it? The head replies that if he weren't good at this, would he still be the head of external relations? Yu Soak says that right now she looks quite plain, but dress her up in something fancy with a few accessories, and they'll fly off the shelves. Soho thinks that, as expected, the chief inspector sees things differently. A young man asks his father for permission to share his opinion, saying that while releasing the doll for sale is important, solving Mr. Sun's problem must come first. Soho believes Lady Chu's request for the doll was a test Mr. Sun could never have handled alone, and was used as a form of pressure. If she hears rumors that their trade guild resolved the issue on his behalf, she won't let them get away with it easily. The guild leader dismisses the staff, thanking them for today's meeting, and the young man turns to his father. Handing him the papers, he says it's a secret agreement they made on their last trip with Chief Zhang, who is on Mount Wutong. The father is a bit surprised. A secret agreement? After looking into it, he seems a bit overwhelmed. He reads the list. Snow Soul Flower, White Tiger Spirit Flower, and Snow Ginseng, all found on Mount Uton? Soho confirms that's right. And Gilson asks if the son is sure he hasn't mistaken the identification of the spiritual herbs, since they haven't had any of these plants in the past 10 years. Soho says he studied medical records about herbs and memorized the images and traits of spiritual plants. Today, he'll bring the collected samples for his father to examine closely. Inside the boxes are samples of medicinal plants. The guild leader can hardly believe his eyes. Imagine, his son returned from his very first journey with some truly fascinating treasures. The man feels that Soho has been surprising him more and more lately, and he almost feels guilty for not being able to openly praise his son as the guildmaster. The quill traces an intricate flourish across the parchment. Soho lets out a tired sigh. Just made it in time. He stands up from the table, puts on his tailcoat, and says, "Shall we move on to the next item on the agenda?" The guy greets the craftsman. Guak Menhen, responding with a traditional greeting, says his journey ended just yesterday, and he's jumping straight back into training without resting. He must be exhausted. Is Soho okay with keeping up this pace? The guy says he never puts off his duties, no matter how tired he is. He tells the teacher he can't break the promise he made to himself to train every day. Guak Menhen replies that everything is fine, but before they begin, he wants to hear the guy's thoughts about his first trip. The teacher asks Soho, "How did you feel?" The guy reflects, recalling everything that has happened to him during this time. He says he wants to become stronger than he is now, believing that compared to the scale of the looming disaster, his current strength is almost insignificant. The teacher thoughtfully says, "To become stronger means," and mentions he's met many who wanted to get stronger. Some sought to achieve it for fame, others for wealth. Some pursued this simply out of respect for the martial arts journey itself. Guakmenhen says that while some sought power for revenge, Soho seems to have his own reason. He asks if the guy will tell him about her, and Soho replies that, as expected from a master, nothing can be hidden from him. The guy answers the teacher's question by saying he strives for this to protect the people he cares about. That's his reason. The teacher replies, "All right, got it." Soho looks closely at Guakmenhen. He believes he has good eyesight. He's strong but kind. In a courtyard lit only by the moon, the teacher's voice calls out, inviting everyone to start the training. The man says that from today on, he will teach him sword techniques. Soho believes he's making faster progress in this life, unlike his past life where he spent most of his time just training his physical strength. The teacher announces that they will be learning the 12th form of the Snow Dragon sword technique. He says this sword technique is inspired by the nature of snow. Demonstrating the movements, he explains that it's soft and light, like a baby's hair. At times, it feels like a heavy, endless blizzard, while at others, it captures the sharp speed of a snowstorm. Soho watches him closely. Then the guy closes his eyes. He mentally repeats every move the teacher makes. Guakmenhen says that each of the 12 forms of the Snow Dragon sword destroys everything the blade touches. The blades of the teacher and student clash. The man was amazed that the student instantly copied his movements. Soho realizes he has accidentally revealed himself. Guakmenhen asks the guy, "What is this?" Soho doesn't know what to say. He never meant to start the sword form dance. Soho explains to the teacher that while watching his incredibly graceful sword dance, he just couldn't resist the urge to try it himself. The man listens to his excuses with skepticism. He asks, "Does the young master mean that he has mastered the divine art of the great Yin I See all on his own?" Guakmenhen's eyes burn with a dark fire as he explains that the 12th form of the Snow Dragon sword technique involves many complex transformations, and seeing it just once wouldn't be enough to replicate it in any way. He tells the guy that despite everything, he just now recreated her almost perfectly, after seeing only a part. There was still so much strange and unexplained in him, but he finally understood the secret. Soho is confused. Did he make it too obvious this time? He tries to explain himself, but the truth is, the teacher, without listening to him, declares he's a genius and becomes so convinced that he starts addressing him formally, leaving Soho confused. Guakmenhen says he was born with an incredible gift for martial arts. The man is overjoyed. He's incredibly lucky to have such a great student. He tells the stunned guy that from now on there's no time to waste, and orders him to pick up the sword. The teacher, gripping his blade tightly, says that anyone gifted with talent must undergo training that matches their skill. Guakmenhen says that starting today, they will train him in the technique at a whole new level using a strict and tough approach. Soho feels the clouds gathering above him and thunder is about to break. On a sheet of paper is Yen Soho's to-do list. First, recruit Lady Hong. Next, visit the carpentry workshop. Then, manage the craft workshop. Fourth, review the financial documents. After that, train in martial arts. And finally, stand night watch. With a manic grin, Soho thinks, "All right, maybe it's time to get started." The door opens and a voice warmly welcomes you. The woman behind the counter asks if they're looking for something specific. Soho, flanked by his bodyguard and servant, says it's a pleasure to meet you and introduces himself along with the trading guild he belongs to. The woman is surprised by such a rare visitor and asks what brought him here today. Soho thinks to himself, of course he's here to recruit a talented person. He needs this woman with such extraordinary abilities that one day people will call her perfect. While the bodyguard standing behind him narrows her eyes suspiciously. What is he up to this time? The guy remembers that in his past life, his connection with this woman began on a rainy day when he took shelter in an old fabric store. He sees that rundown shop as if it were right in front of him. The mannequin was dressed in a silk dress, stitched far too neatly for a place like that. The moment he saw her, he knew he had to take her under his wing. Soho says he came here to make a deal with her, and in this life he also wants to recruit her. The woman is surprised. What, a contract? The guy confirms, yes, an exclusive contract with him, referring to the Silver Sea Trading Guild, and he's not letting her go. The first item on the list, recruit Lady Hong, has been crossed out. A surprised voice comes from the carpentry workshop. What? Young craftsman and Soho is here? A man asks what brought him to them, and the young man apologizes for interrupting their work, saying he's come to ask for a favor. He thinks he's found a seamstress for the doll clothes, and now it's time to take the next step. The guy says he can only trust this task to the proudest and best craftsmen in their guild. The man is almost completely hypnotized by his flattery. Soho entrusts the craftsman with making the doll's face, and they can't hide their excitement over such an important task. 5 items from the Soho list have been crossed off, leaving just one. Running the craft workshop. A few days later, in the private workshop, a hand turns the winding key on a wooden figurine. Soho, standing at the doorway and watching the boy, says he shouldn't have been working late. The guy tells Milya that the sun will set soon, and if he overworks himself, he won't grow. The boy replies that it doesn't upset him at all. What matters most is being able to repay Mr. Soho, even just a little. He gave his family a place to live and a chance to work, and he says words can't express his gratitude. The guy is angry, reminding the boy that they made a contract, so this luxury rightfully belongs to him, while Mill tries to argue back. The guy runs his hand through the boy's hair and gently tousles it. He stands silently for a moment. Then, as he sits down, he asks if there's any progress at work. The boy nods and asks if he wants to take a look. Pointing to the delicate doll, he says he's almost finished, and the boy adds that the doll's outfit was sewn by Lady Hong. He thinks the face looks very realistic and can't wait to show the doll to his sister. The boy suddenly realizes and says that this isn't something he can just let her play with, which might make the girl a little upset, and he imagines tears welling up in Ray's eyes. Soho asks, "What do you mean?" Of course, the girl should get another doll. Mill skeptically replies, "Really?" The guy replies, "Of course, what I just did is only a sample. Once everything is complete, the doll will become the flagship product of the Trade Guild." A finished doll stands on the table as a voice says, "Truly amazing." Sun Jiangju says they'll call her a dancing doll for now. He's amazed. She looks absolutely perfect. The woman standing nearby agrees. It's simply incredible. Looking at her husband with obvious delight, she asks, "Isn't that right?" The chief inspector, sitting at the table with other leaders of the Silver Sea Trade Guild, wonders how the estate owner ended up marrying such a beautiful woman, and someone replies that it's quite a rude question. Sun Jiangju tells Yeon Gilsan that he will never forget their kindness, and the woman thanks him as well. She says that when this beautiful creation is showcased at the upcoming banquet, it would be wonderful if Lady Manhwa could be there, referring to Yeon Gilsan's beloved wife and Soho's mother, who is also known as Lady Orchid, named after her favorite flowers. The guild leader says he truly regrets this, but it's unlikely to happen, as their eldest son will soon be named the heir. He explains that his wife is very busy organizing the ceremony. Sun Jiangju exclaims with joy, "What a wonderful occasion! Young Master Jonho is already at such an age." He sends his congratulations to the guild leader in advance for this special event. Soho looks surprised. He remembers how Wu Jin was wounded that fateful day, with Jonho sitting beside him, begging him to hang on. The man knew he was dying, but his master refused to accept it. Tears stream down Jonho's face as he says, "No, Wu Jin can't die." Turning around, he shouts, "Is anyone here? Call a doctor!" He whispers more quietly now, "Please, someone," knowing it's already too late. Wu Jin has died. Soho peeks through the open door, and Wu Jin, the loyal bodyguard who had been by En Jongho's side since childhood, died tragically on the day the successor of the Trade Guild was inaugurated. Later, sitting at a small table with Soho, Jonho blamed himself. If only he had asked those guests to leave as Wu Jin had advised that day, he wouldn't have had to die so pointlessly. The older brother remembered how happy his bodyguard looked when he found out about the holiday. Soho remembers that his older brother spent the rest of his life drowning in regret and blaming himself. The guy realizes that Wu Jin means to Jonho the same as Palgak or Yeun-am mean to him. His eyes fall on the bodyguard, who is comfortably perched on a thick beam at that moment. Feeling his gaze, the girl looks at him with a questioning expression. She sees the tears welling up in the guy's eyes and wonders, what's happening right now? Soho clenches his fist tightly. This time he's determined to stop Wu Jin from dying. A young man walks down the street with his servant and bodyguard. Palgak asks why he's buying a gift for his older brother in a place like this, and Soho wonders what's wrong with that. The servant explains that this area is full of entertainment bars and casinos, and E&M adds that there are also pawn shops giving players cash for valuables. Soho asks them not to be so biased, saying he's heard there's a pretty decent pawn shop here. Soho sees a door with a sign above it and feels happy. He's finally found it. They step inside and are greeted by the owner. The man says it doesn't seem like they came to leave anything behind, more like to look around for something worth buying, and the guy asks how he figured that out. The owner, looking at Soho, explains that his eyes are different. People who come here chasing quick money have a look full of despair. The guy thinks the man is really insightful. According to some overheard info from a past life, this old man is actually a legendary detective who once hunted dangerous criminals and struck fear with the face hidden behind his ghostly mask. Hence his nickname, the Phantom Mask. Now retired, he runs this pawn shop while gathering evidence and chasing the last killer he never caught during his career. Soho says he was just passing by and came in out of curiosity, and the owner asks him to take his time and look for what he needs. A young man and his servant examine various items while a bodyguard watches them skeptically. The girl disagrees with the guy who said this pawn shop deals in special items. Yen Am says all she sees is a pile of old junk and wonders what kind of random collection this is. Soho looks at the contents of the box Palgak is holding. Bracelets, mirrors, a fan. What's that underneath? An inkstone? He asks the old man, "How much does it cost?" The old man replies, 5 silver coins. The servant asks indignantly, "What?" Palgak wonders why it's so expensive, calling it old junk. But Soho quickly covers his mouth and tells the owner she's buying it. He pours coins into the old man's hand. One says there aren't 5 silver coins here. The guy replies, "Just take them." Honestly, he'd pay more, but that's all he has right now. The old man looks at him with a challenging gaze, wondering if the young master could recognize what it was. He wonders if the guy realized that this was an artifact. Soho says a big banquet is coming, hosted by the Silver Sea Guild, and his older brother is becoming the heir. The old man replies that it's definitely a joyful occasion. Soho continues. He thought maybe the pawnshop owner would join the celebration and have a great time. The old man thanks him and promises to definitely come. Already outside, the guy looks back and sees him waving goodbye. Soho believes that if the old man takes part in the official inheritance ceremony, it will surely help prevent the looming disaster. A guy is looking at the contents of a jewelry box, and his bodyguard asks if he's really going to give the bracelet as a gift since it looks like he just found it on the street. Soho says this is a special bracelet. John Ho, accompanied by Wu Jin, walks through the banquet hall decorated with lanterns. He hears someone calling out to him, "Brother!" Looking back, John Ho sees his younger brother approaching, accompanied by a servant and a bodyguard. Soho asks if they must be busy with preparations. John Ho replies that everything is great and the preparations are almost done. He asks Soho, who must be busy too, what brought him here this morning, and Soho says he has a gift for his brother. John Ho is surprised. A gift? Soho reaches into his pocket and says he stopped by the pawn shop this morning and found something really useful. A guy hands his brother a box, asking him to take it, assuring him it's a heartfelt gift. John Ho opens the box, takes out the bracelet, and examines it with surprise, while Soho explains that it's actually something special. He explains that if you channel your inner energy into it and swing it, it will shoot out thin silver needles that paralyze, like arrows. Then he adds that it's a small gift for self-defense, since you never know what life might throw at you. John Ho is a bit surprised by the present, but thanks his brother. He says Soho doesn't need to worry because bodyguard Wu Jin is always by his side, and the man standing nearby confirms this, promising to protect the young master with his life, though John Ho asks him not to say such grim things, reminding him that his own life is precious too. Soho takes his older brother's hand and says he has a favor to ask. He asks him to listen to Wu Jin's advice today. John Ho is a bit confused and says it's quite sudden. The guy insists he has a bad feeling, and asks his brother to promise to listen to the bodyguard's advice, and John Ho agrees, saying he'll do just that. Soho leaves with his companions, waving goodbye to his brother, and saying they'll see each other later at the banquet. John Ho and Wu Jin watch him go, clearly puzzled. Looking at his younger brother, John Ho asks the bodyguard if Soho talked to him about anything, and the bodyguard replies no, not at all. An Gilsun welcomes the guests to the banquet hall, where people have gathered around the set tables, and announces that today the official ceremony of the transfer of power will take place. Pointing to the man standing beside him, he announces that today he officially declares his eldest son, John Ho, as the next head of the Silver Sea Guild. Dressed in elegant attire, John Ho bows respectfully in the traditional style. The guests, including Soho with his entourage, applaud. A guy sitting at the table looks around, thinking the killer must be hiding somewhere nearby. Watching the guests having fun, he mentally curses the crowd. Too many people. He can't warn them about the killer without causing panic, so what should he do? Palgak, standing behind him, leans in and asks, "Young master, are you looking for someone?" Soho denies it. That's not true. The bodyguard standing nearby says, "Not true? He's been scanning all the female guests for a while now." Yoon says, "Well, she thinks the guy is at the age when people start getting curious about these kinds of things." Palgak is thrilled. He just needs the young master to say the word, and he'll have the matchmakers lined up at their gate. Soho objects. "It's not like that." "It's not." The servant says there's no time for that now. They need to go greet the guests. The girl thinks it sounds fun, but Soho shows no interest in going anywhere. Palgak gently pushes the reluctant guy in the right direction. He resists, wanting to stay, but the servant persuades him, saying, "Come on, don't be like that." The older brother watching this scene thinks to himself, "Looks like Soho is really enjoying this." A maid approaches John Ho, who is sitting at the table, and tells him that guests are waiting in the reception, eager to see him. The young man is surprised. Again? John Ho, accompanied by a bodyguard, follows the maid, while Soho keeps arguing with Palgak, insisting he really doesn't want to do it. The servant keeps pushing him from behind, but the guy resists. He wants to stay here. John Ho, following the maid, remarks on how many guests there are. She replies this is the 12th, and he sighs, saying that's quite a few. The bodyguard asks him to hold on a bit longer, and Jonho agrees, saying he will, since everyone came to celebrate with him, so he must be polite to them. Leading them to the door, the maid informs them that the guests are waiting inside. Jonho tells Woo Jin, "Let's go." The bodyguard stops him and asks him to wait. He says he can barely sense the guest's presence inside. Of course, the guest might just be unfamiliar with martial arts, but he's still a bit worried. Woo Jin asks, "Maybe it's better to politely decline them?" Jonho replies that the guest was expecting to meet him, and it would be rude to refuse. The bodyguard insists he understands everything, but his safety is a top priority. Meanwhile, the veiled guest sits at a table in the room, waiting for Jonho. The young man says everything is fine. It's their guild's banquet, and Woo Jin is right beside him. What could possibly go wrong? The guest's face shows no emotion. She grips the knife tighter in her hand. A guest with her face hidden behind a veil awaits the arrival of Jonho. A woman is holding a knife in her hands. She thinks this overly eager bodyguard talks too much, and it seems like things aren't going according to plan. Through the patterned door, the silhouettes of Jonho and Woo Jin are visible. The guest plans to take advantage of the young man's carelessness and kill him quickly, earning a reward of 100 silver nyans. But reassured that her disguise remains intact, she decides to wait quietly. Jonho, grabbing the door handle, says today is a happy day, so at least no one will try to harm him. As Jonho opens the door, he remembers his younger brother's request. He seems to hear Soho's voice as if in a dream, but today, let him listen to Woo Jin's advice. The young man closes his eyes and sighs. He closes the door and asks the maid to convey his apologies to the guest for not being able to meet, and she replies that she will pass the message along. Jonho invites Woo Jin to return to the banquet hall, and Woo Jin thanks him for taking his advice. The guest, waiting for them to appear in the room, doesn't understand what's happening. A maid enters, apologizes, and explains that the young master has an urgent matter and can't see guests right now, so she invites you to follow her to the banquet hall. Walking down the hallway behind the maid, the guest thinks the situation isn't looking good. It's too risky to attack in the banquet hall. I needed a private moment to strike, but since it's come to this, I'll have to use the backup plan and finish him off quickly. The maid and the guest arrive at the banquet hall, and the killer smiles, pleased to see Jonho is there too. She decides to take out the young man with a single strike, then remove her disguise and slip into the crowd. Quick and clean. The killer swiftly lunges at Jonho. As she approaches the young man, she raises her hand holding a knife and shouts, "Die!" Confusion is written all over Jonho's face. He still hasn't grasped what's happening. The knife comes down, but Woo Jin manages to shield the young master and the knife wounds him. The killer is furious. That damn bodyguard is in the way again, getting underfoot right until the very end. A strong hand grips her wrist. Wounded Woo Jin, holding the killer with one hand, draws his sword from the sheath with the other. He swings his blade, determined to take down the killer. She breaks free from the grip and manages to dodge, but the bodyguard keeps advancing. The killer is surprised. How is he still moving? Was the wound not deep enough? A scream echoes. Into the banquet hall now. Soho brings the warriors and points to the killer, ordering them to stop her from escaping. She realizes she has to get out of here. Jonho hears his younger brother calling him and turns his head toward him. Soho yells for him to use the bracelet! The older brother recalls his words. If you focus your inner energy on the bracelet and swing it, thin silver needles shoot out like arrows, paralyzing the target. Jonho is wearing the bracelet his brother gave him. Needles pierce the killer's body. She's shocked. What's happening? Why can't she move her legs? Holding the bomb tightly, she realizes there's no way to get through the crowd now. She throws a smoke grenade, and a thick cloud of smoke quickly surrounds everything. A scream rings out. Don't let her escape. The killer decides to lift the veil. She stumbles over a hand lying on the ground. She doesn't manage to carry out her plan and gasps in confusion. The smoke clears, and everyone falls silent in surprise. The pawn shop owner points a sword at the bald man kneeling before him, while holding the long-haired mask ripped off the criminal in his other hand. The old man says, calling the killer a faceless guest, "Got you at last." The unmasked killer recognizes him. The ghost investigator in the mask? The killer wants it all to end here and tries to break open the poison capsule. The old man kicks him in the chin, saying, "Not so fast," refusing to let him escape to the afterlife that easily. A capsule slips from the criminal's mouth and rolls across the ground. The Silver Sea captain rushes to his eldest son, asking if he's okay. Jonho says he's fine, but his bodyguard who tried to protect him, Soho, cuts him off, assuring that Woo Jin will be okay. He received emergency care and was immediately sent to the doctors, which surprises the father. So soon? The older brother thanks Soho, and the pawn shop owner says he owes him too. It was only because the guy invited him that he got a real gift today. And Gilson looks at his sword with surprise. Such a weapon is awarded only to officers who have distinguished themselves in the Imperial Guard. He tells the old man, "A humble junior pays respect to his elder." The old man laughs and says, "Enough of that. I'm just an old man enjoying his rest. My prime is long gone. He thanks them all for helping him catch the criminal he's been chasing his whole life, explaining that the man is called the Faceless Killer, who constantly changes masks, making him incredibly hard to track. Soho is amazed. Who would have thought that the criminal who tried to kill Jonho and the person the detective had been chasing his whole life were the same? Maybe it's just a coincidence, but he's glad it all ended well. The old man asks if they mind him interrogating the suspect before handing him over to the authorities, promising to quickly find out who ordered the murder, and the guild leader replies that they'd appreciate it and offers to personally escort him. The old man, Engel-san, and the criminal, escorted by 2 warriors, walk away, marking the end of the big commotion. The guild leader quickly restored order in the chaotic banquet hall, and the tension eased. A few days later, Palgak is running full speed towards Soho, clutching a piece of paper, shouting, "They found out." From a distance, the guy's loud voice carries clearly, "Now they know who tried to harm his brother." The killer was hired by O'Day-Do, the head of the Dark Liquor Guild, a black market group known for supplying alcohol, but actually forcing helpless small traders to buy from them at unfair prices, causing widespread resentment. When the Silver Sea Guild learned about this, they started supplying goods at fair prices, which caused significant losses for the Dark Liquor Guild's business, prompting their leader to hire the Faceless to attack Silver Sea. The authorities were informed, and when the Dark Liquor Guild leader tried to escape, he was caught, marking the end of the guild. Yunnan believes there are some inconsistencies in this story. Actually, the government didn't catch the Dark Liquor Guild leader. Someone had already tied him up and hung him from a tree, so they just found him there. The pawn shop owner sitting across from Soho, sharing tea, says he's heard about it too, and that the wealth was actually divided among the small traders who suffered because of him. The guy laughs, thinking maybe some random warrior just decided to do a good deed out of boredom. Actually, it was Soho, but he's not about to admit it. That day, he secretly left the house and waited for the Dark Liquor Guild leader on the escape route he had used in his past life. When the man showed up, Soho quickly subdued him, took his valuables, and distributed them among the small shopkeepers he had wronged. Taking a sip from his cup, he thinks how hard it was to avoid drawing attention all night, while the old man watches him with a scrutinizing gaze. With a slight smile, he says, "Great job." The guy choked on his drink when he heard that. Setting his cup down on the table, he asks what he means, and the old man replies not to be surprised, since he had been working hard since the day of the banquet, right? The pawn shop owner thanks him, saying it was only because of the young man that he could fulfill his cherished wish, and he considers Soho his benefactor. They no longer notice the cups of tea going cold. The guy says that thanks to the old man, his brother stayed safe, and if anything, he's the one who owes him, to which the other laughs and says, "Then they must be mutual benefactors now." The old man reaches out his hand and invites him to come by more often, introducing himself as Huangbo Hui and promising to help Soho in any way he can. The guy also proudly states his name and expresses hope for future collaboration. They shake hands. The main office of the Silver Sea Trading Guild. The guild leader suggests to everyone gathered at the table that they move on to the plan for distributing the dolls. Soho, sitting across from him, raises his hand and asks if he can share his opinion, and Engil-san gives him permission to speak. The guy suggests distributing a limited number of puppet marionettes. He says they'll make the 1,000 units to keep them rare, and Engil-san asks, "What will the price be?" Soho replies, 10 silver coins each. The chief inspector snaps angrily. "What?" He says the guy worked so hard to make them and now wants to sell them so cheaply. Soho replies that they'll still make a profit since this isn't a one-time deal. They'll be releasing new dolls regularly. The chief inspector struggles to hold back, trying to make sense of his logic. Soho explains that each doll will come with a unique story and be released in limited editions, featuring tales like The Legend of the White Snake or Sushi, adding something new each time to make them irresistible to collectors. The father thinks it's a great idea and the chief inspector agrees. Let him do it. A long line formed outside the building. Eun Gilson, standing beside his sons, says that only a short time has passed since the launch, but there are already so many people. Rumors spread quickly, and people are coming from far away to buy the dolls. It looks like they'll sell out in just a few days. Yen Gilsan tells Soho, "Very impressive," and Soho, pleased by his father's words, replies, "Thank you." And Gilsana calls out to Jinho, who is standing across from him. He says he'll go, and his father agrees, but asks him to be careful. Soho asks his brother if he's leaving on a business trip, and he confirms that he's leading a team to Yunnan to get some tea. In his past life, Soho handled this work, but now Jinho takes over because of the doll business. He wishes his brother could be here to see his success, and it's really heartbreaking. A few days later, Soho clutches his head in frustration. Huangbo Hui, sitting at the table, watches the young man while a servant and a bodyguard stand nearby. The old man comments that he looks down despite coming straight from work and wonders if he'll refuse to eat. The pawn shop owner asks what happened, and the guy replies that doll sales have suddenly dropped. The old man says it's normal for sales to fluctuate and maybe everyone who wanted to buy already did. But Soho replies that it's not just that. Sales have dropped in the past few days and people's attitude toward the dolls has changed. Huang Bohui thinks the cause might be spreading rumors. People say the dolls supposedly trap souls, and though the young man is shocked and insists there's nothing like that in the dolls, the old man replies that the rumor has stuck anyway. Unfolding the map on the table, he says the rumor has already spread across several regions. Soho asks how he knows this, and he replies that if you want to do business at a high level, gathering intelligence is a must. He points with his finger to exactly where the rumors spread. Soho studies the map carefully, while Palgak finds it strange that the rumors have spread in several different places, and the bodyguard agrees, saying rumors usually start in just one area. Soho believes it was most likely a deliberate act by someone. Once again, the pavilion heads, led by Gilsan, gathered around the table, and Soho said that based on what they had learned, he had sent a request to Haoman. They learned that the source of the rumors seemed to be in Sichuan province. As Yeon Gilsan read the letter, he thoughtfully repeated, Sichuan, and Dami says there's only one possible culprit, the Dan clan's trade guild. Sitting nearby, Go Ilpin adds, just as expected. The Dan clan trading guild is a rival group specializing in decorative dolls, based in Sichuan, and they've been closely watching ever since the doll project was announced. The chief inspector can't believe those scoundrels dared to sabotage his business, but Gilsan tells him to calm down. This is his fight. He says they've identified the culprit, and now they need to come up with a strategy to counter the rumors. Soho thinks, strange rumors. Rumors? He jumps up from his chair and asks his father if he can talk, and the father, curious, asks what's going on. Soho says he has a plan and asks if he can go to Sichuan. 3 riders gallop down the road. Soho leads, followed by Palgak and the bodyguard. The servant asks the guy when they'll finally take a break. Soho wonders if he's already tired, and Palgak protests. What do you mean tired? We've been driving for almost an hour. Yunam suggests stopping a bit further along so they can rest and give the horses a break. Soho stands by the horse. The servant complains of pain in a specific area, and the bodyguard drinks water. Looking at the gap ahead, Soho thinks that Yunnan, where Jinho went, isn't far from here, and the journey to Sichuan is just as tough. He wonders if his brother made it there safely. A certain sound puts him on edge. They see a rider approaching, and Yunam says it looks like he's from their trading guild. Soho recognizes him as Li Pil, a warrior from the Wild Pack Squad, and the young man says he has urgent news. He tells Soho, who is shocked by the news, that Jinho is missing. 10 days ago, a wagon escorted by Jinho and several warriors made its way through the canyon. Jinho says something's wrong. He feels like they've been going in circles for a while, and the squad leader, studying the map, replies that the fog is too thick to pinpoint their exact location. The young gentleman urges them to leave quickly. A sudden noise makes them alert. What is it? Rocks start falling from the cliff, and a scream rings out. It's an earthquake. Someone calls out to Jinho, warning him of danger. The young man lifts his head up. When the rocks stop falling, they see a broken cart in pieces. Luckily, no one is hurt. But the wagon with the goods was caught in the collapse, so they won't be able to deliver the cargo. Jinho realizes that the trading expedition has failed. He suggests leaving the cart behind and heading back to the guild, warning his companions to watch out for falling rocks along the way. Leaving the wagon behind and loading their luggage onto the horses, they set off on their journey. All of this happened 10 days ago. Soho, Palgak the bodyguard, and Li Pil are galloping at full speed. Ahead lies Misty Mountain, where strange happenings occur every year in the forests of Yuan province. They say that anyone, human or animal, who ends up here never comes back, which is why this mountain has its name. In a past life, Soho was lucky to learn about this mountain and chose a different path. The guy grits his teeth. His brother wasn't quite as lucky. Li Pil asks the young gentleman not to worry so much, assuring him that his brother is fine. The guy says it helps him calm down and thanks the warrior. Soho believes everything will be fine because he has a way to save his brother. That is, of course, if he can hold out until Soho gets to him. Until then, Jinho and his companions just need to survive. Thinking about his brother, Soho reassures himself that everything will be fine and nothing will happen to him. Jinho and his companions stop in front of a blockage blocking their way. On a narrow path bordered by a sheer cliff on one side and a deep ravine on the other, a voice calls out, "Come!" Soho explains how the search operation will be carried out. He explains to his companions that they will split into 2 groups, himself with the bodyguard and Palgak with Li Pil. He orders the warrior and servant to stay outside the fog while he and Yeun-am proceed with the rescue mission. And if they don't return within 2 days, reinforcements should be sent. The companions object, asking if he really wants to go alone since it's dangerous, and they want to come with him. But Soho firmly replies that he must go alone, showing his bracelet and saying, "This is why." Palgak recognizes it as the bracelet Soho bought at a pawn shop, and the guy confirms it's true. This bracelet only reacts to the wearer's blood relatives, glowing red if any of them are within 30 meters. Soho says that's why he has to go, while Lee Pil thinks that even if they find young Mr. Jinho, getting out safely will be much harder. The guy says he has a solution for that too. 5 people are sitting around a campfire, and one of them is Soho's middle brother. Jinho wonders how many days have passed. No matter how far they go, they just can't find a way out. Staring into the campfire, he thinks about how they're surviving on the last of their supplies. But even those are nearly gone. How much longer can they hold on? One of the warriors asks, "Are we going to die here?" The squad leader says the trade guild has probably already sent rescuers, and the warrior replies, "Why should they have to die? He's being encouraged. Hang in there, don't lose hope." Jonho says, honestly, he hopes they don't come, and the warriors ask why. The young man explains that if the newcomers enter the forest and get trapped like they did, he will be to blame. Looking at the faint forest through the fog, he thinks they might as well just starve to death right here, especially if the rescuers got lost in these woods too. He fears that one of his relatives might be among those rescuers. Jonho remembers his younger brother. There's still so much left unsaid. He silently agrees with Soho, thinking family matters are truly complicated, and if he had known he'd end up in such a tough spot, he would have found the courage to talk to his younger brother much sooner. He hears someone calling his name, Jinho. He asks the warriors, "Did you hear that?" They say they haven't heard anything. The young man is upset. Maybe he just imagined it. He's so tired. Behind him, Soho appears and calls out to his brother once again. "Jinho!" The guy shouts that he finally found him and asks if he's hurt. Everyone sitting around the campfire looks at Soho in surprise. Jinho sighs. Now he's seeing hallucinations and hearing voices, and the warriors say they're having the same visions. A young man hugs his brother, apologizing for how he acted before, saying he should have told him this while he was still alive and that he's truly sorry. He adds that he knows it's a hallucination, but it still feels good to see his face again, even if it's not real. Soho is taken aback by this trick. A guy kicks his brother, telling him to pull himself together. Can't he tell what's real and what's not? Jinho is surprised. Is this a hallucination? The guy replies no. He's here to save him. Soho suggests gathering the others and getting out of here. The young man asks if he knows this place, and the other replies that he does. It's the Misty Mountain. Jinho ended up here because of the fog, right? The brother is surprised. So Soho knew everything and still came here? The other replies, yes. Jinho asks, why? The guy replies that it's because they are family. Jinho repeats after him, family, then says, he doesn't deserve to hear that from Soho. A young man, ashamed of himself, admits that even though he's the older brother, all he's done is hurt him with harsh words. The guy interrupts him and asks him not to say that. He already knows everything. Soho says that if he were trapped on this mountain instead, Jinho would be the first to come looking for him, no matter what. He asks him to lift his head and focus on getting out alive. The guy leads his brother and his men to the spot where Ye Yunam is waiting for them. He explains to Jinho that they tied a string outside the fog and led it straight here. If they just follow it, they'll get out quickly, which surprises his brother. Quickly. But they've been here for days. In the fog, Soho's voice explains to his brother that he hasn't actually come that far, as the energy mixing with the fog distorts the sense of distance. Following the thread, they soon reach Palgak and Lee Pil. Soho tells his brother, look, we've made it out. The guy flinches. The earthquake is starting again. Jinho shouts, hurry up! We need to get out of here! Soho tells his brother, look up! As a large rock comes hurtling toward the young man's head. He jumps to the side, trying to escape. Jinho plunges off the edge of the cliff. Falling into the abyss, he thinks. After all, he's glad he managed to apologize to Soho. Jinho feels lucky. Soho grabs his brother's hand just in time, pulls hard, and his brother is lifted into the air. The young man is surprised. How did Soho end up here? The guy manages to throw Jinho to the edge of the cliff, but he himself falls rapidly down. Hanging over the abyss, his brother screams desperately, Soho, no! The guy slowly regains consciousness, a groan escaping his lips. To his great surprise, the first thing he saw was the pig's pink snout. A little piglet with a scarf around its neck nestled on his chest, and Soho, unable to believe his eyes, asked, a pig? A young man sits cross-legged and slips into meditation. He's thinking about how he fell from a pretty high cliff, but he's okay. Shouldn't a fall like that have killed him? Soho asks the piglet. Does he know something about this? Is he the one who saved him? The little pig remembers searching through the bushes for tasty roots. A noise caught his attention. He saw a falling guy surrounded by an energy field gently lowering him to the ground. The surprised piglet rushes to the spot where Soho fell. He jumps in place, trying to tell the guy everything. But of course, the guy doesn't understand him and says, well, a piglet can't know that. While Soho is surprised by the animal's excitement, he looks closely at the piglet. He returns the look and the guy thinks he's really cute. Soho picks him up and says he's much smaller and rounder than regular pigs, looking like a tiny ball of pale pink fluff. A piglet explores this guy's clothes, trying to crawl into his pocket. Soho takes out his wallet and shows him some coins, asking if he's curious. He explains that this is called a silver coin, but it's not food, and apologizes for not having anything the piglet can eat. But he slips the coin into his pouch and starts nibbling on it. Soho shakes the piglet in horror, shouting that this isn't food and demanding it spit out the coin immediately. But the pig happily crunches on the silver. The guy realizes it's too late to do anything and just watches the piglet. He picks it up and puts it down, saying some people can swallow thousands of silver coins and be just fine. So he doubts a single coin could harm him. Soho thinks out loud, wondering where the road is. He came here to save Jinho's brother but ended up trapped himself. Looking at the fog-covered forest, he thinks everyone probably believes he's dead, so he needs to get back quickly. The piglet snorts as it rushes ahead. Soho asks if it wants him to follow, and the little pig snorts again. A young man follows his little guide. The piglet leads him to the cave and rushes inside. Soho follows him, silently wondering where he's taking her. The pig stops by a sword stuck in a stone, radiating a powerful aura, and the guy realizes he recognizes it. He reads the name engraved on the blade, Silver Mist. In his past life, the sword belonged to the leader of the Murium Alliance, who said the Emperor himself had given it to him. Soho reaches out to the hilt, wondering if grabbing the sword now would mean it never happens at all. The guy stops himself, still too hesitant to touch him. He hesitates. Silver Mist is supposed to be a special sword. Should he even touch it? Soho has heard that if someone unworthy desires it, there will be consequences. The fog wrapping around this mountain is probably one of them, meaning someone has already touched the sword. And as for the other consequences, the piglet suddenly bolts away, scared out of its wits. The guy watches him with a puzzled look. He sees a person quickly approaching him from behind. A warrior approaches him, his eyes glowing with inner strength, his hand reaching for the blade at his waist as he claims it's his sword. Soho is shocked, convinced this is madness, when the warrior declares that he is the one who touched the sword. A guy asks him to stop, saying he didn't come here to fight, but the warrior ignores him, shouting that the sword is his, drawing his blade and charging at Soho. The guy dodges the blow, insisting he doesn't want the silver mist. He barely manages to dodge the next strike. Soho feels the tip of a blade barely graze his neck, realizing he was just a hair's breadth from death. The warrior's foot strikes the guy in the chest. The blow throws Soho off balance. He can't even take a breath. His chest feels tight and suffocated. Lying on the cave's stone floor, he sees a warrior leaping, sword raised high, ready to deliver the final blow. Soho quickly rolls to the side and the warrior misses his strike. Rising to his feet, the young man draws his sword. The warrior with fiery eyes is attacking him once again. Their blades clash, and for a few moments they test each other's strength. The guy manages to push the opponent's blade away. Soho's mind races with fragmented thoughts. Even in this state, every strike from this madman is dangerous. Compared to Byong, who is barely at level 1, he's several levels higher, meaning his combat skills are at least master level. Definitely out of Soho's league, but even so. As he attacks, Soho shouts that he's not about to give up and die here. He strikes, forcing the warrior to take a step back. The guy gets fired up, realizing he has the strength to stand up to him. The warrior's face twists with rage as he lunges at the young man, his blade striking with such force that Soho's sword shatters. The guy keeps gripping the broken sword tightly in his hands. The warrior strikes with inner energy, sending Soho flying far backward, falling onto the stone floor and hitting his head hard. He thinks that he didn't come back to the past just to die in a place like this. He still has so much left to protect. Soho thinks this is why he must return to Jinho and his family. A wild warrior approaches him, claiming that this sword belongs to him. A little piglet starts snuffling on the guy's chest. He's clearly trying to get his attention. Soho wonders if he wants him to look that way. Turning his head, he sees a sword glowing with a powerful aura in his hand. Looking at the sword, Soho wonders, what is this? The crazy warrior's just as stunned as the guy. He heads straight for Soho with determination. The warrior thrusts his blade forward, shouting that this is his sword. The guy defends himself with silver mist. The energy between the opponents crackles with intensity. Soho advances, striking blow after blow. The mad warrior is forced to retreat. In a rage, he bares his teeth but can't stand against the power of the silver mist. As he points his sword at his opponent, the young man wonders how it ended up in his hand. He doesn't know why, but it feels like the silver mist has always been his. It fits perfectly in his hand. The guy feels power pulsing deep inside him and knows he can do it. He remembers his teacher showing him the ice sting technique, explaining that it's a move where all your inner energy is focused into a single point to deliver a powerful strike. But to use this technique correctly, you need to control the sword's energy, a skill mastered only by experts at the highest level. The teacher said Soho is still far from reaching that level. He advised him to focus on the movements themselves without using any extra energy. Soho believes he can do it now and is confident he will succeed. A madman attacks the guy, shouting again and again that this is his sword. The warrior's blade is surrounded by a fiery aura. He points his sword at Soho, who counters with the 8th form of the true technique from the 12 forms of the snow dragon sword. The tips of 2 blades meet, one blazing with fiery energy, the other chilled with icy power. Soho uses the ice sting technique to drive his sword through the enemy's body, piercing it completely. He pulls the sword from the warrior's body, and as the warrior collapses to the cave floor, he begs for forgiveness. He tells Soho that there's a letter in his clothes, barely managing to say, "In atonement for his sins." The warrior falls silent as the young man stands still, gripping his sword tightly. Then he exhales wearily and sits down beside the opponent's body. The piglet climbs up his clothes, and Soho thinks he has defeated a master of the highest level, which means he himself has reached the peak. In that moment, it felt like time stood still, and the wild swordsman's movements slowed right before his eyes. Could this be the legendary state he had only heard about in rumors? He looks at the sword, and the fact that it ended up in his hand at just the right moment feels like a true blessing from above. Looking at the piglet perched on his shoulder, he asks himself, did he really bring him into this cave just for this? He grunts back, and Soho sincerely thanks him, saying he's gained a lot today. He remembers the madman saying something to him about a letter. Soho finds him dressed as a warrior and wonders what he meant by atonement for sins. Unfolding the letter, Soho begins to read. It's addressed to Yudok Jin from the Palace of the Snowy Wind, instructing him to bring the sword to be recognized as a son. Soho realizes that the man he killed was Yudok Jin, who came for the Silver Mist under his father's orders. And the place he came from is the Palace of the Snowy Wind. This is a branch of the Great Northern School of Martial Arts, known as the Palace of the Northern Ice Sea, and within this school is a family that guards the palace itself. This is the Palace of the Snow Wind. A legendary warrior clan once said to wield a sword that could summon northern winds and blizzards, but vanished completely over 10 years ago. Soho hides the letter in his pocket, thinking that Yudok Jin's dog tag and the letter might be important clues he needs to keep. Soho covers the warrior's body with stones and drives his sword into the grave. He had no choice but to kill him, and bowing his head, he says, "Rest in peace," knowing the man must have been a proud warrior of the Snowwind Palace. The piglet snorts softly as Soho looks down. He's brought him the sheath. A young man sheaths his sword, which radiates an incredible, powerful energy. Soho notices with surprise that the fog is starting to clear, and tells the piglet it's time to head back to the others. The boy asks if he knows the area well, and the piglet snorts in response. Soho heads toward the exit, admiring the piglet. Can it really point the way with its tail? He admits the little pig is pretty smart, and the piglet snorts in agreement, proud of its cleverness. A campfire burns surrounded by stones, and a voice asks, "Has he found Soho yet?" Lee Pill answers, "No, not yet." Jinho sits hunched by the fire. The warrior says he looks exhausted and asks to be trusted with everything while he returns to the caravan to rest. The young man replies that he can't do it because Soho ended up in this situation because of him, but the warrior insists it's not his fault. Jinho bitterly wonders why everything had to end this way. He remembers how it all happened and thinks the guy didn't care about his own life, even though he was just starting to be honest with him. He recalls Soho's face and voice, still feeling like he's right there beside him. Jinho wonders where he could be now, when suddenly his younger brother's voice calls out from behind him. Soho, with a piglet perched on his shoulder, is happy they all waited for him here and says the fog has cleared, so it's time to head home. His arrival seems to freeze everyone in place, leaving them stunned and unable to believe their eyes. Jinho says he must really be exhausted. Another hallucination has come to him, but Soho protests. "What? I'm not a hallucination." He convinces his brother that he's back and asks if they must be tired of waiting for him by now. The guy asks for forgiveness for making them worry, and Jinho jumps up from his seat, rushing toward his brother. He delivers a powerful kick to Soho's knee. The guy, caught off guard by the reaction, staggered. Palgak even closed his eyes tight, while the bodyguard stood there with her mouth open. The guy who fell to the ground says, "No, he didn't have to hit that hard." Jinho lashes out at him, furious. What was he thinking? If he tries something like that again, Jinho doesn't even know what he'll do. He promises to follow him into the afterlife and make him pay for what he's done. Soho feels guilty towards his brother. As he gets up, he asks for forgiveness, saying he never meant to worry him so much. Jinho gives his little brother a tight hug. Tears stream down his face as he says the most important thing is that he's alive. Soho doesn't try to break free from the firm embrace. Palgak, already holding a piglet in his hand, along with the girl and the warrior, look at the brothers with affection. In the quiet of the night, Soho's voice suggests heading home.